Hello and welcome to the Roundtable Podcast. I'm Shogun. Thank you so much for joining me. This is number 6, I believe, in our Roundtable Flat Earth series. We've done a series of formal debates, one-on-one, as well as public debates and public discussions. Today is a little bit of a new format. Rather than adversarial debate format, we are going to do an open discussion format with a panel of hand-chosen Flat Earth community and Earth agnostic community representatives, including my good friend Hank Hill and 2 people that he has made introductions with, who I will meet today. Those guests are Wall of Lies and Sassy. So thank you all for joining us. Before we jump into that, and thank you to the live audience as well, we are the Roundtable Discord server. Just Google Roundtable Discord to find us. You can find us through politics or conspiracy theory sections of Discord. You can find us on all social media. We're streaming currently on Twitch. We have our YouTube channel, which all of that can be found under RT Portal and RT Podcast on the server. That being said, welcome Hank, Sassy, and Wall of Lies. How are you guys today?
Hey, great. Thanks for having us. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Cheers.
Yes, thanks so much for joining us. So before we jump into the event, and thank you, Hank, for setting it up, I wanted to tell the quick personal story of why I wanted to schedule this event. I don't really know what to make of this myself. I'm agnostic about what it really means, but I'll just tell the story and you guys can come to your own conclusions. So I was leaving work the other day, and I take a train home, and there's a public train basically full of people. And I'm on my cell phone doing Roundtable, as always. I'm listening to the voice chat. I'm not talking, though, so I'm not saying anything out loud. And a guy gets my attention who's sitting beside me, and he goes, "Hey, I see you there sending all these messages, always sending messages through your phone, but they're lies. You're sending lies, and you're a liar." And he goes, "You're a flat earther." And I go, "What?" And he goes, "You're a flat earther." I go, why would you call me a flat earther? First of all, I'm not a flat earther, but it's weird that he would call me that because I know a lot of flat earthers. I do a lot of flat earth events. So I'm like, why would you call me a flat earther? And he repeats, he's like, "You're a flat earther, and then you're a liar, and you're lying through your phone." And he gets this plastic spray bottle out of his backpack and sprays my hand and my arm with this chemical. I can smell it's a chemical. I don't know what it is. So I get up and I go, "You're spraying me with shit. I don't know what it is. Now we have a problem." So I walk to the front of the bus to get away from the guy at the front of the train and sit down. A few minutes later, he follows me, starts trying to threaten me, get in my space, intimidate me. So I have this stand up and I'm face to face with this guy for 15 minutes, very, very close to violence. The guy follows me off the train, starts chasing me, tries to spray me in the eyes with this chemical. He's going, "Look over here, bro, look over here," trying to get me to look and spray me in the eyes with this bullshit. So I literally ran away because I didn't want to fight the guy and get sprayed again. And then he came into my locked apartment building and tried to open my door, or rather knocked on my door, which I took as just a threat to show me that they know where I live, because he shouldn't have known which building I was in or been able to get into my building or known which apartment I was in. So the whole thing together was sort of implied it was a threat, that they knew my face, they knew my address, they knew my server, they knew my flat earth connections, and it was possibly supposed to be a threat. And the point is, it's very bizarre to call a random person in a random public environment a flat earther and a conspiracy theorist, but I actually do run a conspiracy theory server that does a lot of flat earth. So I thought, well, fuck it, just in case it is supposed to be a threat about flat earth, we should do a big flat earth event. And that was basically the idea behind it. But I also wanted to get that story out because it was very strange, and it only happened 2 days ago. Just give me a sec. Okay. So thanks for letting me set that context. I'm now going to hand the mic over to Mike or to Hank. Hank, just introduce us, and then we'll let you pass it through to Sassy and Wall in whichever order you want. But actually, Hank, why don't you just tell us, I know it's a classic story question, but how did your journey discovering Earth-shaped questions even begin?
Well, I guess it started in 2015, around March or May, maybe April, somewhere in there. And I was watching this video, and the guy was saying that, NASA lies and they faked the moon landing. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's right. And he was saying they're part of the government. You don't trust your government, do you? And I was like, well, no, not wholeheartedly. I don't actually trust my government. And he was like, and NASA works with Department of Defense. And I was like, yeah, I sure don't trust those guys. And then he was like, Operation Paperclip. And I was like, I sure don't like Nazis. And I don't know if he mentioned the connection of Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard, and I was like, yeah, I sure don't trust science fiction writers or, known occultists. And then it just like he flat smacked the crap out of me. He was like, the Earth is flat, and I was like, wait, what? And it's been a very interesting journey. I've learned a lot. The thing about the flat Earth is that it breaks down all the normal barriers. Like, your gastrobiologist doesn't know, gastroneurologist doesn't know what the neurologist knows. And with flat Earth, like all that goes away. Like in flat Earth, you'll learn about everything and you'll specialize in nothing, as opposed to specializing in one thing and then that's all you know. So with flat Earth, many men know many things, and we're all sharing this information with one another, and it's kind of jaw dropping, like how far we can see. We're not supposed to be able to see that far. And then you find NASA documents that says that it's a stationary atmosphere over a flat, non-rotating Earth, and it's like, wait a minute, what? So it's like, wow, it's a very interesting journey, and I feel very privileged to been doing this for almost 5 years.
Fantastic.
Microphone.
Thank you.
Pass the microphone over to Sassy. Sassy, thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us over here. I am Sassy Undeniably. I have been in the Flat Earth community since 2016 and came out as a Flat Earther in 2017. And my experience was that of losing my religion and knowing who I was, all in the same day. A friend had introduced me into the Zeitgeist movie, and I took a look at it back then when it first came out and decided it wasn't for me. But things kept coming up in my life that pointed me in that direction. So when I looked at it again, there was other parts of it that spoke to me. So I went on a journey looking for information to confirm what I believed, and I found none of such evidence regarding my religion, who I thought I was as a person living in America, and that the place where I thought I lived was actually not my lived experience. And so I dropped all of those things. And the more and more I looked into flat Earth, the more it made sense to me, being that I was a military brat. I could see how throughout my life, I just never took notice of our flat Earth, but all of those things came back. And I've been an awareness activist for the past 5 years, and it's been a wonderful journey. So that's my story.
Rob Cup.
Yeah, how you doing, guys? My name's Breaking Down the Wall of Lies. I've been a flat earther for around about 3 years now, just under 3 years. My journey begun. I was always into conspiracy theories. I'm 47 years of age, and I was always sort of looking into mysterious stuff like the Bermuda Triangle, natural combustion, UFOs. I had no reason to doubt that they'd lied to us about living on a flying spinning ball. So for 44 years of my life, approximately, I believed every single last bit of it, the whole shebang, until I watched a documentary made by Fox TV, and it was a 5-part documentary, about 10 minutes each part. And by the end of that, after listening to video analysts that tore apart NASA's evidence that they'd been to the moon, photographic evidence was torn apart as well. Guy that worked for NASA's rocket systems, he was in charge of them. He said they didn't have the capability to go to the moon. It was all faked. By the end of that, I realised they'd lied to us about the moon landings, and I thought, well, what else are they lying about? So I went on a trail to find the truth and came across Flat Earth, Eric DeBay, Jeranism, ODD TV. Kept digging, watched hundreds of hours of their videos, found every resource I could at the time. And by the end of maybe say within about 2-3 weeks, I was 100% convinced that we didn't live on this boat and that it was all make believe. You know, they'd made it up from start to finish. And, you know, I made up my own YouTube channel to tell other people about the lies. And I've been doing that for, say, over a year now. So that's my story. And then I found the 24/7 live server about 2 months ago, and I've been there ever since, learning from them guys. So that's me.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing your introductions. We will open it up for general conversation fairly quickly, but I do want to do a couple rounds quick with our panel first. So the second question I'd like to ask, and again, answer in whatever order you wish, the three of you, is just present your strongest evidence that really stands out. After all the time you spent looking at flat Earth, what do you think are the most compelling individual pieces of evidence that you could verbally explain and or post in the recorded event channel that would convince someone who is not yet a flat earther that they should give it a serious look?
Sassy, would you like to go first?
Sure. Mine's is that of no curvature. I don't experience the Terra that we live on as having any discernible curvature whatsoever. I've done many observations and recorded it through photo evidence of, no curvature. And when I look out and I remember, as a child, never having to account for, being on, a ball, it reaffirms, what I visually see as well as what I experience on a day-to-day basis. The fact that I don't have to worry about going out and, shifting in different directions because, I would have to account for 8 inches per mile squared. I don't drive that way. I don't fly that way. I've been on many different traveling excursions, planes, boats, buses, and have never seen any curvature anywhere. So for me, that is self-evident. I don't need anything outside of that to prove that I live on a flat stationary plane. I just don't see curvature whatsoever, not locally or when I raise above, let's say, a hill or a mountain. The horizon appears to meet my eye level and never recedes away from me. So for me, that's confirmation of a non-spherical Earth.
Yeah, you want me to go next, Hank?
Yeah. Do you mind going next?
Yeah, basically everything I've looked into, I would agree with Sassy. There's no curvature to be found. Even long distance observations with lasers over 40 kilometers show a perfectly flat Earth. There are other observations going up to 1,200 miles that show missing curvature of 119,000 meters. There should be a curving ball to be seen. It's nowhere to be seen. Every high altitude balloon footage, 120,000 feet, shows no curvature. The only curve you'll ever see is convex and concave when they're using a GoPro camera or a fisheye lens. So at the end of the day, there is no curve. It's a perfectly flat horizon. It rises to the eye level no matter how high you go. And I've looked through all the footage from NASA, and you can clearly see it's CGI. It's these images are constructed just the same as the blue marble. 15,000 composite images to make up what we would call planet Earth, and stuck onto a bowl. That guy never got one picture at all of the real Earth. He got 15,000 composite images and he glued them to a bowl through a computer. So, there's no evidence whatsoever. As regards space, every image I've looked at, I've seen better images from astronomers people looking at the stars through amateur telescopes, than what I've actually seen through NASA. I've seen so many faults, so many mistakes, everything from the ISS with wires, green screen technology, kid-on gravity, etc., all made up, all fabricated to make us believe we live in this flying spinning ball, and not any of it's true, And the only reason we believe what we believe most of the time is because we watch our TVs. That's where they tell you we live on the flying spinning ball. They put it in books, documentaries, every series from history to geography teaches a ball. They have to keep the lie going. They have to keep fabricating it. There is no evidence, no proof whatsoever of us living on any flying, spinning ball. We live in a flat, motionless plane, immovable, And space, so what is space, How can you have the vacuum of space next to a pressurized gas system as well? That doesn't make any sense at all. Them questions have not been answered. There's so many things that they're telling us is a pack of lies. And if another thing as well, if you look at all planets, they're like 2D images that are on a projector screen. They're so false, it's unbelievable. No proof of satellites. There's not one real picture from any satellite at all. But we've got plenty of satelloons that they are recognized. NASA's even got videos putting them up. So, all this technology they make out to us and all these lies they tell us, it's just fabricated. It's got to keep the story going. So that's my evidence against the ball earth.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate that. Well said. So for me, I said earlier that I don't always trust the government. So it's like some things that they say are true and some things they say are false. So it's important to have discernment and not to, use blind faith. So for me, their own documents talk about it's, a flat, non-rotating Earth. I've seen several. I'm sure there are plenty of people here that could post them. But this one in particular, the Evolved Sea Sparrow Missile Block 1. So this is a line of sight targeting system. And the way that it works is the radar is line of sight. So the only way that, the missile is going to hit the target is if it's sighted in, like line of sight. So that means that it can't be, a refracted target that's, down around the curve. Like you can't use refraction on this one. So it actually has to be looking at it much like a rifle with the sights like that. So, I posted a few links in the background. I'm sure people are going to say, different things, but the range is, 35 miles. And if you do the math, it just doesn't work out for it to be on the surface of a ship hitting another line of sight target on the sea for 35 miles. So I think this is, one of the most important sources to look at is, from the government itself. They'll tell you. NASA has documents of a flat non-rotating Earth. So I think if you look at them, they'll tell you the truth sometimes. I think that's really important, that a lot of people want to ignore that they're telling you the truth in their own documents.
That would be enough to obstruct about 815 feet according to the globe model.
And actually, that's a good point for me to say thank you to the panel for our 2 rounds of introductory content. And since we have such a large room of attendees, I think it's a good time to open it up for general participation. So you guys can either ask questions to the panel or you can freely discuss Flat Earth. You can debate it, you can agree with it. It's an open mic now, but we will refer back to the panel from time to time.
So I have a question. What do you guys think? Is your belief on the flat Earth model 100% certain, or could you guys be mistaken that it could be a globe, but we're not really knowing that much, or is it 100% a flat Earth?
It's pretty close. It's enough of a belief to power exploration toward it being flat and taking the observations that we see and interpreting them from a flat Earth lens.
It's not a belief system. I want to correct you on that. because this is self-evidence. It's something that we know to be true, and anything that flies in the face of that, which is contrary to what we experience, can be nullified. So it's not a belief, it's not a model, it's our lived reality, and as we experience it. So when you have something such as a globe model, it's telling you right away that it doesn't match your reality. For all intents and purposes, besides, plains, hills, mountains, etc., the terra in which you live on is experienced as a flat and motionless plane. You do not experience curvature whatsoever. So we do not say that we live on a model. We live in reality. And as such, it's not a belief system.
Yeah, the only thing that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you were saying.
Yeah, it's verifiable information. So verifiable information can be known as true because it can be verified. So there's no
It's not
belief.
self-justified.
Sorry?
So it's not self-justified belief. Since you can verify it, it still can be justified.
All right.
It's verifiable.
Yeah, I'd like
People
to
justify their beliefs.
I'll just note everybody's doing really well so far, but I'll just remind you we have almost 60 people in the voice chat, so following the core voice chat rule is going to be extremely important. So I'm going to just post them again in general chat, especially for our new members. They're very, very simple. But yeah, all we try and do here is take one at a time. So in order to make sure everyone can be clearly heard and understood, just wait to make your point until whoever is finished their point first. Thank you very much, and just continue.
All right, I'd like to jump in here real quick. I hear a lot of words being tossed around with belief. What we have here is empirical evidence. It's not a belief. A belief is something that you have, even a justified one, would still constitute it being a belief. It doesn't, in any way, shape, or form, it's not able to be verified. So it stays in the realm of a belief. Even if you think that you have a good answer for it, your justified answer, it still won't be put into the realm of serious science. You can't bring it forward to be made into empirical evidence because it's something that is not able to be verified. On the other hand, if we are able to do measurements on this Earth and we are able to falsify the model of the globe Earth with the said metrics that they give us, then that is indeed empirical evidence that we have against this globe model with a radius of 3959, the circumference of 24,901 miles. These set metrics are given to us to define the globe in which people, believe that they live in. So by falsifying that, we absolutely know for certain that it is not the globe that they tell us that we live on. Furthermore, it's also evidence that the Earth does not have any curvature to it. Once we do a couple things, long distance observations, and possibly some laser tests over bodies of water. And we could gather this data, compile it, also do it on different days, on different ambient temperatures of the day, and provide more evidence to kind of support the case that the model that we have been given has been falsified. So this is where we stand with it. It is not a belief. And so I just kind of want to clear the air when it comes to this word of belief being tossed around. I don't believe the Earth is flat. I know that it is. So that for me has very hard facts attached to it. So what I like to do is, if there's information I could hand to somebody, I'll just hand it to you and say, here, you could verify it yourself. I won't say, believe me, the Earth is flat. I will never do that. So I'll go ahead and pass the mic.
I hope that answers your question. If not, we can clarify.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for answering my question. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
If nobody else has a point, maybe I'll just give a little testimony about my experience with Flat Earth. I am a conspiracy theory analyst since I was, a young child, basically. So I've followed everything. So I looked into every conspiracy theory. So I went down the Flat Earth rabbit hole as far as I could go. I watched all the YouTube videos, Mark Sargent, Under the Dome, which is a remaking of Flat Earth Clue. That was what I really tripped out on. I also saw Eric Dubé's 200 proofs of a flat Earth and so forth. And some of it appears quite compelling. But again, I'm not a natural science guy or a math guy or anything like that. So I'm not an expert, but the flat Earth arguments made by Mark Sargent are trippy because he points out that they did this thing called Operation Fishbowl Dominic, which means literally fishbowl of God, and that's a real thing. And in a short period of time, the U.S. government fired a whole bunch of high-altitude nuclear missiles and in the high atmosphere. And his interpretation was they were trying to see if they could break out of the firmament dome, which seems like an outlandish claim, but if there is a dome, kind of makes sense. And then they called it literally Fishbowl of God was the name of the study, which implication is obvious, right? So, some of that stuff does trip me out a little bit. And the whole argument that you can see certain things across a distance that you shouldn't be able to see them because you do the curvature calculation, they should be way below the curve. But it appears you can see them all the way down to shoreline, meaning there's no curvature at all, let alone enough to completely conceal like a tower. And I can't account for that. So I call myself an Earth-shape agnostic. I don't know the reality of it, but it's not clear to me why there would be so many anomalies when it should just be a straightforward matter. And if the ocean is one big curve, it's not clear to me why we don't see some kind of a curve, right? If you're standing on the shore of the ocean, even given that it's a huge expanse, if it's actually curving, shouldn't you be seeing a gently sloping hill away in the distance instead of a completely flat thing of water? I mean, this doesn't make sense to me intellectually, but I'm too stupid to understand it either way. I'm just saying there's a lot of weird shit there that still perplexes me.
Well, the thing is, if you put a marker out where the horizon is 3 to 6 miles out at sea level, the land should drop away from there immediately if it's a boundary condition on a sphere. But when you rise up in elevation, there appears to be flat land that rises up past that marker in this, mental exercise, as if it is flat and level, not the boundary condition for a ball sloping down and away from you. So this is a contradiction. So if you're talking about beliefs, if you believe that reality should, on some level, be represented and brought back to your senses, well, then it's going to be easier to believe in the flat Earth or some sort of flat level plane as opposed to a ball when we don't really see evidence of that. If you believe your senses should, on some level match reality.
And there's lots of evidence of plains all over the Earth. I mean, there's the Bolivia salt flats, 9,000 square kilometers of less than 1 meter of vertical relief. So that's pretty amazing to have 9,000 square kilometers that, are pretty much basically perfectly flat. And that's not just the only one. I mean, there's Kansas is flatter than a pancake. That was a study that was done. There's the Great Plains all over the world. It's not just in the United States. There's Great Plains of Canada. There's some in the Middle East. I mean, everywhere. And then there's the abyssal plains. And it makes up more than 50% of the ocean, right? And the Earth's surface, excuse me, not the ocean. More than 50% of the Earth's surface is abyssal plains. And, we use words like plate tectonics, and you know what shape a plate is. So, it's everywhere. You have to open your eyes and put away your bias in order to seek it out. The truth, you have to seek it out without bias. And the thing is, that's how science is supposed to work. It's not supposed to be that anything I label as science is automatically science, and you have to believe it. You can't have blind faith in scientism. And scientism is the belief that something is scientific when it's actually not, right? So in order for something to be scientific, it has to go through the scientific method and strictly adhere to it, right? So if I say that theoretical astrophysics is scientific, how do you manipulate the variables in space, right? That's not science, right? So if we're sticking strictly to science, it's mostly done in a lab where you can manipulate the variables. So I think there's a common misconception of what science actually is these days, and I think we need to reform what we call science. Not that there's anything wrong with the scientific method, but our understanding of it has, decreased over the years, and I think it's because the educational system has really failed us in a lot of ways, and I believe it's on purpose because they don't want you to know what real science is. They don't want you to know like what empirical things are, empirical observations, right? They want you to think that, well, science says this in the headlines in the news, and you're just going to believe it, when actually science doesn't say anything. And there's lots of people that disagree with us on the shape of the Earth, right? But we're all looking at the same data, right? But we're coming up with different conclusions. And that's fine. You can agree to disagree with people, right? But the problem is that we want truth to come first, and not just people's, belief systems to come first. We want the truth to come first. And in order to do that, you have to put away all your bias. And it's really hard to do, because if you're just in a room with everybody, agreeing with everybody all the time, right, you kind of have these goggles on, and all the data filters through these goggles, and you're never going to see any information from other people that disagree with you, because you can't see it. Nobody's there talking to you. And if you do come in contact with these people, I doubt you'll even be able to perceive their information because of your bias. Go ahead.
I have a question, if you guys allow me. So, do you guys have like, I don't know, do you guys have any like models regarding certain phenomenal activities that we experience as normal people? Like, for example, regarding, of course, the flat Earth model. If you guys have a model regarding, like, if you guys have an account for a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse, I heard a bunch of flat earthers says there is a mysterious object. You guys call it the mysterious object that sometimes comes in front of the sun and blocks the sun from the people, and it comes in front of the moon and blocks the moon from the people. That's why sometimes the moon appears to be black, and sometimes there's an object in front of the sun that appears to be black. So what do you guys say to this anomalies, and how do you guys account for it in your Earth model?
Okay, so the moon is going in front of the sun, causing the solar eclipse. And there's problems with that, like the shadow on the Earth, but I'll not talk about that right now. And then,
Okay.
as far as the lunar eclipse, I wouldn't really call it a shadow, because what I see is, with my own eyes, is I observe the moon turning red. It goes from glowing white to glowing dark red, and
With your own
very,
eyes?
with my own eyes. I've seen it over and over again since I was a kid. I've seen many lunar eclipses since I was a child, and the moon glows red, like dark red. So I wouldn't call that a shadow, because when I cast a shadow on something, it doesn't glow red. It's just there's no light bouncing off of it. That's what a shadow means, like no light bouncing off of it, right? So I would say that at this point, there's a lot of things we don't know, and it's okay not to know. But just going by what
Okay.
somebody tells you that it is, I just can't do that at this point in my life, knowing what I know now. Somebody else want to answer that same question?
Well, I mean, what is the regular answer for that? Is it redshift? Yeah, the difference in light, or like maybe it's like a similar phenomenon that we get at sunset, right? The whole sky pretty much turns orange if the sun is at the right angle. Couldn't it do the same thing to the moon?
Well, light is very hard to grasp, because we appear to be getting representations of the object in the distance, but they appear to be very observer specific. I can see an object and put my fingers around it to say, here's where I'm seeing the object in my eyes. And if you look to the side to see what I'm doing, you're going to see my hands off somewhere else in space, and not quite covering the object the same way that you would cover it with your fingers from your vantage point, from your perspective. So, light and sensation is very, very hard to get a handle on, because it appears to be very observer specific. So the image that's represented to our eyes may or may not actually match quote unquote reality, or may just be, very observer specific.
And to answer the question, there is no flat Earth model. And it's a reification fallacy to say, I have a spinning ball here in front of me that's a model, and that's what we live on. You live here, and point to the ball. Like,
I
that's
never
not
said
reality. Of course. I'm just explaining that you don't actually, live on the ball, point at it, and you live here. No, you don't. That's not real. You actually, point down to the Earth wherever you stand. That's actually where you live.
I'd like to kind of submit something to the people who believe the Earth is a globe, in regards to talking about the eclipses, let's say. And I'll speak of one specifically, the lunar eclipse. If we're talking about
solar?
Well, solar, lunar, but specifically lunar, I guess, so I can put it in context. If we were to say that the shadow that's being cast on the moon, the mainstream science would tell you that it is the Earth's shadow doing that, the eclipsing basically on the moon. And I'm pretty sure everybody would be in agreement with that if you're standing on the globe side. But here's the problem that we're having. How can we substantiate the knowledge that it is the shadow of the Earth eclipsing let's say the lunar eclipse. Because first we have to understand that the Earth is a globe. And so if we were to take a step back before we actually make an assumption to say that it is the shadow of the Earth, we need to take one step back and say, how do we establish that the Earth is indeed a globe? And then move forward from there to say that it is casting the shadow and we are in a ever-expanding cosmos or a solar system. So first taking a step back and looking at the evidence of the Earth being a globe, how is it possible that we could substantiate that claim, the very positive claim that the Earth is a globe with said metrics that it has? So I'd like to submit that to the people who believe that the Earth is a globe, I guess for some thought and maybe some processing there to say, hey, wait a minute, I never really thought about that. Like, how do I substantiate the Earth being a globe so that it is indeed casting a shadow on that moon? So I guess it's something for you to think about. If you got a way to rebuttal to that, or if you just want to think about it, that's just something to submit.
Thank you.
Miggy or anyone on the flat Earth side, could you tell me how many presuppositions are made before assuming that there is, like, for example, on the lunar eclipse, the Earth eclipsing the moon itself? How many presuppositions does the globe make in order to explain away that phenomena?
It presupposes movement. It presupposes. What was that? Sorry.
You can go on. It's fine.
Yeah, carry on. It's okay. Continue. Thank you.
Oh, I was just saying it presupposes movement. It presupposes sphericity and globularity. It presupposes a vacuum medium that we are moving through. Well, actually, it's a vacuum nothingness. A vacuum nothingness that we're moving through with nothing between us and the other object. What else? It presupposes that the only light source is the sun. To cast the shadow. It presupposes that the shadow is caused by blocked light as opposed to, say, a magnetic field or something electrical. Yeah.
Right, and in the case of the Solennelian eclipse, which is dubbed the impossible eclipse, where both the sun and moon are above the horizon, and we see the shadow of the supposed Earth coming from the top of the moon down, it is supposed that on the explanation to the impossible eclipse, which is kind of one of the points that we bring up in the flat Earth discussion, is that how could it be the Earth's shadow if we're seeing both the sun and the moon above the horizon, and the shadow being cast on the moon is above the moon, coming from the top down? So there's a bit of impossibilities that happen within the heliocentric explanations, which is why they dub it the impossible eclipse. I'm not saying that there's not an explanation. I'm just saying that's what they dub it. But so their explanations kind of rather get really strange when you actually start looking into why this kind of eclipse actually takes place and how the shadow is actually being cast. But like I said before, those are presuppositions of things that are happening, even within the context of this Solennelian eclipse. But like I said before, with the presupposition, you're building a faulty premise, and then putting on top of that knowledge that you think to be true as to what's happening. So really, your faulty premise is the thing that needs to be addressed before we move forward and start talking about like what the sky is doing, or what we see.
Well, these presumptions are based on that the flat Earth model is based in the current model of how we see the universe. My question to you guys is, how does flat Earth hold up in electric universe theory or plasma theory?
A flat domed enclosed universe would be more likely to be an electric like battery. The electric universe tends to be much smaller than the huge, vacuum, heliocentric Big Bang universe. So it could be smaller and much more localized at the very least, like the flat and domed model seems to imply.
Do we know even what electricity is, or do we just know how to measure it and utilize it?
The essence of electricity? Well, we'll only get so much of anything's essence, but yeah.
No, that wasn't a question to you. It was more a question to whoever asked the question about electric universe. What we don't even know what electricity is.
Well,
we know we can measure it and utilize it and put it in our house, but what is that? That's almost that's the bigger question, I think, right?
Well, electricity.
What's the flow of electrons?
You stole the words right out of my mouth. It's a flow of electrons, but in the electric universe, the theory is like instead of a vacuum, we're actually surrounded. There is no empty space. Thus, you don't need dark matter, which is just a placeholder in math. But it's to say that we are surrounded and built by energy. Everything is just energy, all the way down to the quantum level is energy. So the electric universe, maybe a little bit misleading. I like plasma universe, to be honest. But what about, have you guys heard of Muska energy sheets? It's a certain type of, it's a phenomenon that happens that was been seen in space. That basically magnetic fields can bend at a 90-degree angles, creating a flat surface. It's I don't know if this has any correlation with flat Earth, but I've always been curious if there was.
What's his name? Southern Israelite goes over the syllogism like this. Either there is an internal organizing force like gravity that would make things into balls, or if that internal force is absent, the universe is flat and externally organized by, some sort of other mechanism like what we see with, the flat level plane. And so if, there's some sort of other organizing principle that's external and, possibly flat, maybe.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm wondering. I mean, if this phenomenon can happen, right? Like, people, they have to. The heliocentric model, is based all around gravity, right? Gravity pulls everything together and makes a nice tight ball. But if it wasn't based in gravity, then it could be like, I mean, a Muska sheet is just an example of this kind of phenomenon. I'll post a video here momentarily, but I don't, like, in my mind, it might not even be out of the realm of possibility to build upon that as a world and then have a flat plane.
Well, I guess the bigger point is that we don't know how flat it is or how electric it is or plasmatic it is. We just know that it's not the globe that NASA's claiming. Does that make sense?
That makes so much sense because, like, I mean, I know you guys post a lot of different pictures of the flat Earth and stuff like that, but these pictures don't add up, right? Like, there's some very misconstrued things. And someone who was talking about the moon landing, I was fortunate enough to come across, I think maybe the same documentary, but it was 50 minutes all together. And these things are hard to find, right? And it shows how they did little different lens tricks and stuff like that. So yeah, I always found that to be quite intriguing. There was another.
What I would like to make clear is that the mechanism by which this place works and our actual experience and observations of how we experience this realm are two different things. We could speculate all day about how it works, if there's a creator behind it, the ontological premises of false dichotomies. But at the end of the day, we tend to go with what we know on flat Earth. And when I say that, I mean our lived experiences. There's nothing parallel or equal to that. Like looking up at the sky and wondering about the mechanisms at which the sun is able to spin around us, or if stars are actually, lights in the sky, can't compare to you being able to experience, put your hand in the dirt. You can't go those places, so you will be forever guessing about how it all works. It's more of a philosophical standpoint that one would take when observing the stars and the seasons. Anything outside of a natural phenomena is created by man, and even the explanations for how that all works would need to be re-examined based off of the facts, and the facts are what we experience, and anything that flies in the face of that would have to have some sort of proof behind it, and it would need to be repeatable. So not a lot of this can be put into the realm of science or the scientific method, because we're talking about measurements. We're talking about topographical proofs of this. And this is something that we can measure and prove that we're not living on a spherical Earth, because you can go out and test this for yourself. It's within your reach. When you start talking about space and other things, that is definitely not within anyone's reach.
I have a question for Hank and Pathis. If I'm saying your name, Pathis, whatever it is. My question is, how do you explain? And I'm genuinely curious. I want to know the answer to this. How do you explain time zones and how it's dark out in one part in Alaska right now, and it's like morning over there, but it's after I am on the East Coast?
Okay. Well, first, I would ask.
Yeah, Hank, can I just because I can't post pictures or anything, I'm having to pass them to Mazon. He's having me. Can I just say something about what I believe we're living on?
Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, cheers, man. In answer to the question that was asked earlier about sort of what we're on at the minute, right? If you look into the text chat, see how I've put, if you look up, Mazar's posted it for me, but you'll need to scroll up, because by the time I got the other pictures to Mazar, obviously it's way up there. It's basically a flattened version of the universe. Some of you guys will have seen it before. It's meant to have been taken from a satellite, obviously, and it's a picture of our flattened universe. Has everybody got that picture?
If you could just post it again.
Yeah, I can't post anything because
you're a square now. It says you're a square, so you should be able to.
Oh, I should be able to now, right? Okay, cool. Let me just sorry. Let me bring that one back down. Okay, here we go. That's that. So see that there? That's a flattened version of the so-called universe. Now I want you to notice something. See at the bottom of it, what does that look like to everyone? As in, I'm not talking to flat earthers. I'm talking to anybody that believes in a globe, or anyone who's skeptical of the globe. What's that look like at the bottom of that?
Looks like a flat
Would
plane.
you agree? Yeah, a flat plane. It's like a flat disc. Yeah. Now, I'll bring the other posts back down. We believe that, let me pull them down just to explain this. So we believe that that's not posting. My apologies for this, guys. Copy. Paste. There we go. So I personally, I'm going to speak for myself. I believe that there is, and that's not playing as a gift. That should be opening up and closing up. And basically what that is showing there is what we see as it is map, which is the Gleason's map. And all it would seem to be that they've basically took the Gleason's map approximately, and they've curved it round the bowl. The exact same thing as Rob Simmons did. That's what Rob Simmons did. They gave him all those composite images and shaped it round a bowl. You know, he never seen a bowl or anything like that. So you've got the flattened version of the universe. You've got the Gleason's map basically bent round a bowl, and further up. Hold on, I'll grab it for you. 2 seconds. My apologies. This would have been much easier if I could have sort of posted in there originally. Right, there we go. See that one there, the little picture with Earth in the middle? That's what I believe we live on. I believe we live on an extended plane that is God knows how far. And the other one, 2 seconds. Thanks for being patient, guys. So that there is what I believe we live in, ignoring the massive ice wall that's round about it. But you know, see the flattened universe. What they've basically done is, right, this is how they've created the fantasy of what we live in. You know how, like, if we were really spinning at 1,000 miles per hour at the circumference, what they reckon at the equator, water would fly off that ball. Forgetting gravity, forgetting mass attracting mass, forgetting warping of space time, take them out of the equation. You've got the atomic mass chart, or the atomic weight of every element. You don't need mass attracting mass on a flat surface. You don't need gravity on a flat surface. You don't need warping of space time if you live on a normal Earth that is ruled by normal physical laws, and we see them every day. I throw something up, it's heavier than the medium round it comes back down, density, blah, blah, blah. So we know all these physical properties, but we wish to ignore them because science has told us, pseudoscience has told us, that these must exist because you live on a ball. Now, Gen CBR1 put a little photograph up that switched me the light bulb on in my head. It was a tennis ball with water flying off it, and do you know where it looked identical to? The Milky Way. So what they've done is they're telling you part truth. So they give you some of the truth, here's some physical laws, but that doesn't work in a ball. So we have to bend those physical laws and properties, because you would fly off into space, water would fly off into space, nothing would survive, gravity would kill you all. But, it's not that strong a force. It's a little bit weak. It's the weakest of the four fundamental forces. We've been grown up, guys, to believe a pack of lies. They're telling you the truth on one hand, and they're telling you lies on the other. I just want you to have that in your heads, that what they've actually told us is that we can survive on this ball down to these physical properties, imaginary properties that none of us can prove. We don't see them in reality. They're all made up, fabricated. And how do we know that? Because when we try and test out and find these magical properties, they don't exist. But that picture there is where you're living. I'm not saying it's identical to where you're living. And the flattened universe is basically they've created everything above you within that space. And the Milky Way and everything else is simply what would happen really if we lived in a flying spinning ball. All these things are part truths, guys. I just wanted to get that out there and get that into your heads. So if you think that all this is real, when we need gravity, warping of space-time and all these things, we don't. See, in a perfectly flat surface, guys, you need nothing. You've got your atomic mass chart. That's why a kilogram of the same of steel will not weigh as much as a 10 kilogram weight of steel unless you increase its area. That is what your chemistry is all about. Dig into the chemistry, understand atomic masses, and you don't need gravity, you don't need mass attracting mass, and you don't need warping of space-time. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Yeah, I just want to try to answer that question about the time zones. So first I would ask you to completely throw everything you know about the standard model out of your head just for a moment. And the reason for that is because you can't mix the models, or it makes like an abomination model that doesn't make any sense. So if you could look at Google the inverse square law, and you'll see that light doesn't travel forever at the same signal strength that it leaves from, right? You know this. You leave your city, you can't get the radio station. You go to your curb to take out the trash, you can't get your Wi-Fi signal, right? So light doesn't travel as far as you think, especially at the same signal. So if the sun is a lot closer and it travels over a large area, it's going to have a spotlight effect where it's only going to light up so much, right? Because a candle can't light the whole supercenter, right? It can't light the whole mall, right? You need several lights in order to light the whole thing up. So that's the way that it works. That's a perfect picture that somebody just posted. So yeah, any more questions?
not on that fact, but I just wanted to comment on breaking down the wall. Those pictures you posted, especially the one like the ice sheet and like the Earth sitting down. It speaks a lot to me because I don't want to turn this into a religious thing because this is more of a scientific and flat Earth debate. But I was studying the Bible earlier today, and just real quick. It says it's not popping up. I thought the Bible thing would pop up, but it says in Genesis 1:6. Bear with me, gentlemen and ladies. I got almost there. That there. Oh my gosh. Here we go. Oh, and God said, "Let there be firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." So you have this ice sheet, and that's one form of water, and then you have the earth, which is surrounded in the sea. So, and then it goes on to say, "And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament, and from the waters which were above the firmament," and so on. And so it goes on, and basically, I was watching this Bible study and was explaining how at the beginning the earth popped out of the water, right? And I know that probably doesn't make a lot of sense to anybody, but to me, it's starting to connect the dots. And the fact that that other cultures throughout the world, that other picture you guys referenced, shows that they have the same kind of flat Earth model. There's a lot of truth with the connectedness of all of our cultures, right? We see the same types of symbols, the same types of stories, the same types of gods. And, if they're all right about that, they might actually be right about the flat Earth. So,
it shows the opposition of how the world is created in these different models. Is water the primeval substance as it is implied with the biblical narrative and other narratives, or is it worlds of fire, stars, and light, in like a Big Bang explosion? So you kind of have a clash of ideologies with the cosmology about how these things actually occurred originally.
Interesting.
I'm glad
so,
to help there, Melon, and join. Because to me, they're presenting us with some of the truth, but they are hiding the rest of it. If we need to be able to read between the lines to find out what is the truth,
Yeah, this goes back to the point of we don't know exactly what it is. We'd love to find out. If we had $50 million a day to research all this stuff plus 100 years, we'd be pretty far along. But we've been lied to for so long by the people at NASA and these other organizations that have a vested interest to keep everyone believing in the ball. And that's, again, the point. We are just proving that it's not what they claim it to be. That's the most important thing here. We don't know. There's a lot of unanswered questions. There's a lot of things that kind of make sense that, hey, look at this. It's a conceptual idea of what we're talking about, but we can't, we're just barely scratching the surface here. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and it's just the more and more I learn and about just everything, right? I'm in university right now. I'm a psych major, and I'm I just did my experimental methods class. I'm getting very familiar with the scientific process, the scientific community, and the types of people, and their I guess modes, or not modes but mentalities, their ambitions. And there are, don't get me wrong, there are good scientists out there, but it seems to be that there, ironically, the heliocentric model is stuck in a circular logic.
You get circular logic when revelation is no longer available. And so this idea that things have to make sense to us and no other things are allowed to make sense is really a denial of revelation from anything other than a human rational source. And so there is no longer any revelation from, say, non-human sources that could also possibly reveal knowledge, if you trust them. And so we're being stuck in this very circular, very entrapping materialistic paradigm where things work very rigidly. And in some cases, little to no revelation is available.
Yeah, I like that circle diagram, Fuzzy Ewok, that you put up. It's like when you get working with these globe fantasy model lovers, it's all they can do is go in a circle because there's nothing empirical, there's nothing objective about globe pseudoscience, and so it's might be even a little scary to people when they look into it
Yeah.
and find out the only reason I think this is because it's on TV. There's no verifiable evidence, no proof of curvature, no proof of motion, no scientific experiments showing any of this. It's a fantasy they've pushed on people. It's pseudoscience. It's a religious belief and has nothing to do with measurable reality.
Yeah, that you just said that because we believe it in TV and we've believed it since kids. Merlin, right, your icon right there is from that movie Sword in the Stone, and Baba Yaga pointed something out today. There's that scene where he's literally teaching Arthur about the globe and how there's a whole scene about flat Earth and globe, and this is Disney kids right trying to tell. And if this gets even further, what Baba Yaga said today, that there's a scene where literally Merlin's like, "Oh, blast me to Bermuda." And he literally turns into a rocket and shoots himself into Bermuda. When NASA is shooting rockets out of Cape Canaveral, they're shooting themselves directly into the Bermuda Triangle. Think about that for a sec. This is like deep,
By the way,
seated, next level wizardry that's going on to mind control the kids of every generation after that. I mean, that you have to at least recognize that's weird, right?
And I just wanted to point out really fast that is one Disney movie out of all of them, pretty much. Like, it's everywhere. Trust me.
And the lie is so insidious because you become dependent on the lie. You don't form a mind with strong pillars and strong foundations that can find truth. And so this mysticism that's inherent in the heliocentric model, where reality no longer has to match your senses, makes reality and the lie unverifiable and uncheckable, because there's nothing to verify it against except just belief. It doesn't have an analog in reality to check, so you're going to tend to be mystical, and you're just going to believe it just because it was taught to you, as opposed to saying, okay, is this verified, is this tested, is there an analog in reality that I can use to double check this?
Has anybody ever been close to the Arctic Circle? Anybody?
The Arctic Circle?
Yeah, has anybody ever been close to the Arctic Circle?
As far as I know, Admiral. Yeah, he did like the
I don't know.
expedition.
I've been to Nunavut.
Other than myself, no.
All right, and Shogun, in the summer and winter, depending on when you were there, what was the lighting like?
It's long days, long nights, but usually long nights. Most of the year it's dark all the time almost, and then sometimes it's always daylight, but that only happens in the full circle. You get like 3 days of sunlight or something like that, but yeah, usually it's long, cold nights, short days.
Yeah, okay, so wintertime, you get about 3 to 4 hours of daylight all day, and then during the summer, you get like 3 or 4 hours of darkness all day. So
and that would be
yeah, you guys jumped right around that question, and somehow you guys have a theory where the sun actually slows down, moves in, and continues on.
Well,
yeah.
Go on, Lemon.
It appears to circle closer to the central northern section, giving you the 24-hour day up there. So that would be explicable if this, flat Earth model is, correct, by a tightly circling sun that circles outward progressively toward the southern tropic, and out over the flat plain.
You're breaking up, Lemon.
The sun circles more tightly for summer in the north, and that gives you the 24-hour sun in the Arctic. And then it spreads out to the south.
And that's not like that. That's just us, taking an observation, but that's literally it. It's not like we're making that up.
Well,
can I just leave really quickly? Yeah. Is that possible? Am I allowed to? I don't know if there's like predefined sides or whatever.
No, go on, man. Go ahead. If you got the mic, you grab the mic.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just very quickly, I wanted to mention as well is that when 24-hour sun has been viewed from places like Anchorage in Alaska, the sun actually appears to rise and fall in the sky, which doesn't actually have an explanation on the globe as far as I can tell. But on a flat Earth, it's very simple. The sun is simply moving further away and nearer as it circles overhead. So it's not just that we're coming up with an alternative explanation. It's actually that I think the explanation fits better on a flat plane than on a globe. Sorry, the observation fits better on a flat plane than on a globe.
Yeah, I have to say as well, what sort of proof and evidence says 24-hour daylight and see it? You know, the most I've ever seen is one video where it's showing a sun swerving round. I mean, I could produce that in my computer with a 70 quid software. You know, who's got the proof that there's any 24-hour sun anywhere? I'd like to see it. I'd love evidence.
You know, if it makes
Well, the thing is,
Trunks in Norway gets darkness from November all the way to January, where they don't see this.
Yeah, so
That would be because
yeah, go on.
Oh,
Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that's because it's doing a closer loop at the North Pole. You wouldn't see it if you're standing at the edge of the merry-go-round and it's spinning around you. If you're standing at the edge of it, you're not going to necessarily see something. If you're in the middle, you're going to see something going around you. We can see that. That's why it's 24-hour sun in most of Norway and Alaska and stuff. But if you're at the very edge of the other side, you're going to barely see that going around. But later in the year, when the circle gets bigger, it's going to get closer towards you at the edge. But when it's in a tighter loop in the middle, you're not going to see it because it's too far away. Does that make? I mean, half the time it's opposite where you would be from the center anyway. Does that make sense?
Understand that. Absolutely understand that. But that means the sun would literally have to speed up and slow down and change its trajectory.
No, well, we already have that.
That's what I meant. Hold on. That's what I meant. We don't know what it does, slows down, speeds up. We don't care. We just observe it to do what it does.
Also, that's already a problem in the heliocentric model where we vary from 91 million miles to the sun to 95 million miles to the sun. So this is a problem for both models. So at that point, it's just a null issue.
Yeah, I mean, you would agree that if this is how it works on a flat Earth, you could have a 24-hour sun in one place and then not in the other, then that would work on both models. So it really isn't proof of one way or the other. It's just another explanation of the same observation that the heliocentrisms of the world have hijacked. We can both look at the same observation and one person says that boat is going over the curve, and then someone else says, no, it's just getting beyond our visual, vanishing point. Well, no, it's definitely going over a curve. That's what I think I'm going to teach everyone in school from now on. No, but there could be 30 other things that obscure our vision when something's that far away. No, it's definitely the Earth curve. Well, okay, we're saying they're just hijacking the same observations and calling it Earth curve, calling it rotation, calling it the sun doing whatever it wants to do. They're just hijacking the same observations and claiming it.
And that seems to be the main basis. They think that the only thing that can obstruct objects in the distance is a hump of Earth curvature. But, you can have obstruction from optics over a flat plane.
Yeah, let me point something else out. Okay, so say that big burning ball of flame, right, and it takes 8 minutes for its light to reach the Earth, okay? That's at sunset. Sunrise. So why is my sky getting light for 2 hours before I actually get the sun lighting the actual sky to a blue shade? That's not a big burning ball of flame. That's a small, close ball that is coming over the horizon of a flat plane, and eventually when its light gets to me, which is 2 hours later from when it first starts rising, and it's not over the curve, because it should light up the full area. If its light's hitting anywhere around about me, or anyone on this earth, it should be lit up straight away, not taking 2 hours. And when it sets, it takes a couple of hours for the light to disappear. That's a small local sun. That is not 93 million miles away. It's impossible.
Makes sense. And the thing is, we've been kind of taught not to trust our senses, but to have faith that, this movement and this ball will kick in eventually with no sort of, micro to macro way to test it on the way to this big ball. On the small micro level, why am I feeling movement, to translate to a huge moving ball? On the small to micro level to macro big level, why aren't I seeing 8 inches per mile squared of curvature to lead to the big ball relative to some straight standard over the surface of the earth? It's going to be very difficult to test a model if you don't have some way to verify it from the small micro level to the big macro level.
Yeah, and I'd like to go to... yeah, go on, Sassy. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask if they had any other questions for us besides people monologuing.
I mean, yeah, if anyone has a question or comment, please bring it forward. If not, this has already been a great debate, discussion, conversation about Flat Earth. We'll continue to do these events periodically. Does anyone have a question or comment?
Oh, I have a question. Have you guys seen any experiment have been tried to maybe detect the motion of the rotation of the planet? And did you guys see any experiment that proved that might be there's a rotation of a planet, maybe with a gyroscope or a pendulum? I don't know. What do you guys think? Have you guys seen any experiment of that sort?
There has been Ares failure. It's a pretty common experiment where he tried to detect the motion of the Earth, and it's called a failure for a reason. Nobody can detect it. And see, here's the thing, right? If you're going to be honest, think about what I'm saying. If, according to Einstein, all motion is relative, well, actually, it's classical. So Newtonian relativity, right? If all motion is relative, then for anyone to say that the Earth is spinning is lying to your face, because if all motion is relative, in order to tell whether the sun's going around the Earth or the Earth's going around the sun, you'd actually have to have a third point of reference outside of the solar system. You would literally have to be outside of it, right, in order to tell which one's, going which way, right? So for anyone to make that claim, they're being incredibly dishonest, right? And nowadays, we debate against these people all the time. We call them fundamentalists, right? Because they're not your typical, globe Earth believer. They're like the religious zealot type, right? And they'll tell you that science doesn't settle anything. I'm sorry, they'll tell you that, sorry, I misspoke. They'll tell you that the science is never settled, right? And in the same breath, they'll tell you that science doesn't prove anything. So if science doesn't prove anything, why are they telling people that we live on a spinning ball Earth, right? And the thing is that that's not even a scientific question, right?
What?
Go ahead.
Well, they try to say science doesn't prove anything, but they try to be slick and say, we're going to eliminate all these other possibilities and leave it up to you to decide the one right answer left. So it'll try to basically prove things indirectly by disproving the competition. And so the main thing is we need to be consistent with our philosophy and see how it's working and then how it's not. If we're supposed to have universal gravitation, why do we have helium going away from the Earth? That makes gravity fall apart right there. The ball that gravity is based off of fall apart right there, and several other tenets of this philosophy.
Yeah, and I feel like I'd hate for this to end without. I feel like we got off into a lot of philosophical type issues, which was interesting, and the whole thing's been great so far. But I was hoping that someone, maybe Sassy, could present just we haven't even gotten to the simple long distance observations and measurements that that show without a doubt that the globe model is a logical and mathematical failure. So I don't know if you guys would allow Sassy to go over the black swan observation if she's willing, or something like that, because I feel like the measurements have gotten lost here.
Hello again to my subscribers.
I mean, sure, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Let me first explain that the black swan theory or theory of a black swan event is the metaphor that describes an event that comes as a surprise, has a major effect, and is often inappropriately rationalized after the fact with the benefit of hindsight. So what that means is that if you say that all swans are white, it only takes one black swan to disprove that statement or that argument. And so with the globe, that's what we have. We don't make a positive claim. We're just refuting the positive claim that the Earth is a globe when we make observations such as the black swan. The black swan is an observation that was made a couple years ago by a flat earther who went out and did his own observation. And so we took a still from that, and that gives us this modus tollens example that you see was placed in the chat by me a little while ago. And it's just a basic statement. Let me scroll up to that again. I might be able to repost it. See.
Breaking just posted it right there again at 3:45.
Oh, I was in the wrong chat room. Okay. So it states that if P, then Q, not Q, therefore not P. If the Earth is a sphere with a radius of 3959 miles, which is P, then every horizon distance measurement must be no more than 1.225 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, which is Q. The geometric horizon, which is the Earth's curve. Not Q, horizon distance greater than 9.4 miles, therefore not P. Earth is not a sphere. And so with that observation of the platforms Hill House and Habitat, what you see is that with the observer height of 1 foot, the max distance to the geometric horizon should be 1.22 miles. Yet in that photo that we posted, the horizon is beyond both of those platforms. One is at 6.21 miles and the other is 9.41 miles, which means that the horizon is distance from the feet and height of the observer is greater than 10 miles. So that is a difference of, 8 point some miles that should be hidden behind Earth's curve. Yet we do not see that. We see both of those platforms are viewable beyond that distance that we shouldn't be able to see. And if Earth was a globe or a sphere, then it should stop short of those. And we would need to move forward in order to view those past the curvature of the Earth. Yet we do not. And this isn't the only black swan. There are many that disprove the globe. But this is key and important because it shows that that calculation of a spherical Earth with a radius of 3959 and a circumference of 24,901 miles is falsified. It shows that it doesn't hold weight to reality. And I don't know about you, but I would like my reality to match what I know to be true rather than believe something that I can't prove unless I'm appealing to an authority figure. And anyone can go out and make these observations. You don't need any special tools to be able to do this. You can actually find your own mile marker like these platforms are. You can find a clock tower or a mountain or a building within the city that you live in. Find out your exact location. You can use Google Earth to do this. And you can see how much of a difference to that object that you're viewing, how much Earth curvature should be between you and the mile marker that you're looking at. You can plug those into the Earth curve calculator, and it's supposed to be no more than 8 inches per mile squared. And that's give or take a few. We give them a lot when we're talking about globe measurements because they fall short all the time. So it's not a problem. We give you, 10 or 20 of anything, and we're still coming up able to see these things. So you can use extensions, binoculars, P900s, P10,000s, whatever you want to use to make your observation, to prove to yourself that what you believe is true. And if you're not willing to do that, then it's a moot point for you. It's not really an issue. You can just take anything at face value and not really put it to the test. And that's something we need to do more often than not, because we have more reasons why we need to be putting what our authority figures in our governments and what our heads in society are feeding us and feeding our children, because they've been known to, lie. And this is one of, if not the greatest deception that's ever been pulled off in humankind.
Yeah, I just want to point out that you might look at these GIFs and say, they don't prove anything, right? This isn't any kind of evidence. I actually posted the original video. So if you scroll up just, a few minutes at 2:46, I posted the original video. He shows you like him walking out on the beach, placing the camera down right in front of the water. Then at the end of the video, I think he shows you where exactly he was at, GPS coordinates, and it's, repeatable. Like he's done this more than once. If you go to his YouTube channel, he's done this more than once. So yeah, it's kind of at this point.
I have a question.
Just a second, please. Almost done. At this point, if you want to deny this, right, you have to be willfully ignorant. Go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't love myself being a willfully ignorant, but I think I've seen this black swan many, many times, and I've seen actually many other videos and many other pictures. It's totally different from what you guys are providing. I think one of the guys, they said there's a lot of like refractions that comes into it. And I've seen also videos similar than the one that you posted that shows that actually the further oil rig, the one at the far back, it's actually way lower than it appeared to be in other days. Is it possible that refraction or maybe the weather are pulling it down or pulling it up? And how would you account for the refraction, you know, effects
That would
on
have to
your
be
measurements?
Hold on, Lemon, hold on, if I may. Wouldn't you say that that is a red herring to the actual observation? Because you're talking about other observations with other unknown metrics.
Yeah, when you're talking about a logical mathematical argument, Sassy went into this at the beginning. If you are you're making a statement about reality, saying it's factual, it takes one instance of disproving that statement to make that statement logically false. That was what she was explaining about the if P then Q, and it being disproven logically by the if not Q then not P, meaning that argument, and even some globers have admitted, yes, it shows that our Earth does not have this alleged radius of 3,959 miles. So if there are other observations that have other things going on because of other atmospheric conditions, that has no bearing on any long distance observation you do, because you shouldn't be seeing them ever. Also, the people who argue refraction have a misunderstanding about refraction. It would occur when you go from different densities of mediums, in which case our atmosphere is layered vertically, it is not layered horizontally. So you are not going to be able to, refraction doesn't just magically create images. And regardless, doesn't matter what refraction is doing on any other day. You have one observation, you shouldn't be able to see the horizon behind those oil rigs ever, and you do. And there's thousands of other observations. So it doesn't, that's the whole point. It's like you're
I
saying,
see.
you're saying that, so we're saying there's a black swan that shows you that not all swans are white, and you're over here, I mean, not you, but those people are over here saying, oh, look at all these white swans, look at all these white swans, ignoring the simplicity of the logic which Sassy just laid out.
Yeah,
Can
well,
I add to that really quickly
refraction's not
and
going to
say that?
change the distance.
Might I add
Make
to
sure
that
not to overtalk.
really quickly and say that when you're talking about refraction, you're talking about the distortion of objects on the horizon, not the actual horizon itself. So even though what you're viewing is distorted, it doesn't take away from the fact that you can still see those objects regardless of the distortion, the angular resolution, which is your eye being able to resolve minute details. That's what refraction does, is make distortions in the thing that you're viewing. It does not cause the horizon to be loomed backwards beyond the things that you're viewing. That just doesn't happen. It only applies to objects on the horizon. And light refraction in and of itself does not disprove the fact that the distance has been given and it's set in stone. 8 inches per mile squared, a recession of the physical barriers of the earth. You just don't find that.
Absolutely. I have a question regarding.
real
I have a
fast.
question,
I'm sorry,
very
real fast.
important question. No, it's just regarding the black swan thing. So if I were to do like a scientific method or logical method, just like you guys said, if P then Q, if not Q, then of course it's not P. So is it better like to do this experiment in multiple times in different days in different weather conditions, just to account, just to be extra sure that there's
Short
no
answer,
weather?
yes.
Hold on,
I
I'm still
think Hank
talking. Don't
told you
interrupt me,
that.
please.
I said yes. You're asking.
All
So
right,
you
thank
just
you.
totally overtalked him. Zetman, please continue.
Thank you. So is it possible, like, I think it's better for like someone to take pictures for every day throughout the seasons in the winter and summer and spring and autumn to check if there's actual any effect from the weather, because I studied physics and I remember we pointing out lasers into a different mediums, gas, medium, pressurized stuff and this, and it appears that the lasers and the light, it bends after a certain distance. So I'm just assuming, no, maybe there's a possibility. It would be honestly better for you guys if you take pictures on different days, different weather conditions, and if it appears to be the exact same thing that the oil rig is actually behind, then I will concede and I will tell you, yeah, absolutely. But because I saw different pictures on different days of the same two oil rigs, the black swan you guys claim, they appear to be a lot of those the pictures in different days and weather condition appears to be very different. Like if you look at the hands of the further oil rig, it looks very disturbed. Like there's a lot of distortion. What do you guys think?
Yo,
Well, can I actually answer something? People are getting very, very sorry, Hank, interrupt or OG. All I would like to put forward is, right, how many horizons do you think there should be, Zetman?
I don't know.
Well, one. Should there not just be one horizon? So if you're seeing it, right, okay, so let me explain. So that observation that was made there has been made at 9.1 miles. Okay, so you're seeing a horizon behind 9.41 miles that's impossible with the globe mathematics. If you then see a horizon in front of those oil rigs, what is the Earth's curvature changed?
I don't know. Maybe because of refraction, things appear to be more flat, or
But that's the
appears to
point.
be
That's
looks
the
for
point.
this. That's my
Right.
question. If you guys are
Yeah.
able to do the
Yes.
test or take pictures in different weather conditions, just to make extra sure, that's all. If you guys can do it, that would be great also.
Okay, hold on. I want to get this point across. So, can the Earth's curvature change from day to day, or should it remain the same?
Sorry, what did you say again?
Can the Earth's curvature change? If it's a bowl, can the Earth's curvature change from day to day?
Like the real physical curvature?
Yes, of course, yes.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I
Well,
don't think so.
that's
I don't know.
crazy because let me just point
I'm
something
asking
out.
you to know.
Okay, yes, okay. So the Earth's curvature, of course, it changing. It cannot change. Neither can the geometric horizon for the bowl. It is the distance it is. So the very fact that the horizon is seen behind the oil rig at 9.41 miles shows there's no curve. That's what it shows. That's the point you're missing. It doesn't matter about the fraction. It shows the horizon behind the oil rig that shouldn't be able to be seen behind the Earth's curvature. That's the whole point. And let me further just say, and then I'll let anyone else come in. I've done my own observations, okay? I did them at a foot observer height, and I can see the whole of an island and that has been verified since. These are my own observations. Over 25 miles, I can see the full of an island. The only thing that changed that from day to day was not that the Earth's curvature was moving, because it can't move. It was simply the atmosphere, atmospheric refraction, and it was also whether there's swells in the water. But the Earth's curve must remain the same, surely, for a globe. And that's impossible to see 25 miles of the whole island that is sitting there in the sea. And you know something else? I went to a 20-foot observer height and proved that the whole island is there. But guess what? See, on some days I couldn't see I could see more from the 1-foot observer height than I could from the 20-foot. Now, what does that prove? All that proves is that your view of an obstacle in the distance is obstructed through slumps in water, waves, atmospheric refraction, but it all remains the same. There is no curve. Thanks, guys.
Real quick, I would say if I was a zoologist, right, and I was under the impression that all the swans that I'm going to be looking at are white, and I all of a sudden find like a whole bunch of them that are black, would I then have to then say, well, just in case, let me look for 365 more white swans just to make sure that these are really black?
Well, you'd have a choice between padding the theory, rejecting the theory, trying to modify the theory to keep it, or just rejecting it entirely. It looks like, people are going to try to interpret this with the globe paradigm as the basis from which you do other interpretations. The only thing is you have a highly theory-laden idea of how light refracts, and you can have light refract over a flat plane. But the idea that it would lift the image over Earth curvature without de facto evidence of two images, one that's the original image and the second being, say, the duplicated image brought over the Earth curve to your eye, is a little theoretical.
I see. The thing is, someone posted a picture of the black swan in another day, and it appeared that the oil rig at the far back, it was behind or below the horizon. If you guys can give an explanation why it appears to be so in that particular picture, I would be glad. Thank you.
Can I just mention something here? Can I just mention something here? It feels like people are talking past each other, and I'll mention it in this way. You know how when you were told when you were little, why do boats disappear? It was because of a physical curvature, right? You ever heard that before? Like boats disappear bottom first because of a physical curve. Yes, no.
Yes. Yes,
Okay,
I'm familiar with
so,
that.
the problem is that the black swan shows you that the horizon isn't physical. That's the whole point of this. So the horizon can't both be physical and optical. It has to be one or the other, right? So that's the point of this. So whether the horizon moves or not still is our argument. I just want that to be really crystal clear.
Because I think
Yeah,
I
that's
remember.
that's what I was trying to explain. The horizon cannot be two places at once. The only thing you're seeing is the obstruction in between. Black Swan proved that the horizon in the back should not be able to be seen. That's the whole point of the Black Swan.
Because I remember I spoke with some flat earthers. They said you can also see some effects, optical effects, like above the sea, like mirage. Sometimes you can see boats floating. It's like appears like very crazy. It's like optical illusion in some sense. I'm just assuring that maybe there's something of that sort, or some type of new mirage, or some type of new illusion. It could be refraction, it could not be. But it's always, I think, in my opinion, it's always better to take pictures on different weather conditions to actually assert exactly if there's refraction are playing in the role of whether the horizon is there or behind, or it's actually flat. It's just like a better way of studying things is, try to play with the variables, change the variables. What do you think about that?
Well, people have
sure,
done that.
but can I just want you to repeat that you've actually understood what's been said. And I'm not trying to patronize you, but we have a lot of debates on our server where you'll make a point and then someone will make a point that shows that they didn't understand the previous point, like
I'm
30
not
seconds
debating.
later. So
We're discussing.
Well, whatever you call.
We're just
No, I'm telling you about previous debates. That's all I'm doing. So, I just want you to be absolutely 100% sure that we're not talking about a physical curve when we're talking about horizon. Are you in agreement with that?
The thing is, I don't know whether this thing that you guys are showing a physical horizon or the illusion horizon, because that's what I'm asking. If you guys, how can you guys discern if this is a real horizon or not real horizon without taking pictures in multiple weather conditions? Otherwise, how can we absolutely know? You know what I mean?
We have done those.
Well, what he's telling you is that the argument used to be that boats would disappear over the physical curve of the earth, right? That's what it always was. That's the story that's purported, that boats and things that disappear bottom up in the horizon are disappearing because of the curve of the earth, the physical curve of the earth, right? Well, after that, after the Black Swan argument, the people that we debate with, what they started telling us was, well, the horizon's apparent, right? When we asked them, hey, hello, in this observation, your geometric horizon should be at 1.2 miles. Why is it past 9 miles? And what we're told is, oh, because the horizon's apparent. And you know what we've told them after that? Well, welcome to flat Earth. That's been our argument the entire time, because the literal definition of horizon is the apparent position where the sky appears to meet the ground, in which case you would have to see it, right? That's what apparent means. We all know what it means. You would see it. But we're told about the geometric horizon, we've never seen it, right? Now,
Absolutely.
they've come up with all this nonsense like, oh, refraction. We don't see the geometric horizon because we have an atmosphere. Okay, if that's the case, then how did you ever measure it in the first place? Right? It makes no sense. Literally, the definition of horizon is the apparent position. And now we're told that the horizon that we're seeing in the Black Swan is the apparent horizon. Again, welcome to flat Earth, because that is our point. Your geometric horizon should be at 1.225 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, right? 1 foot, your geometric horizon, your curve, what they used to call the curve of the Earth, that's supposed to be at 1.2 miles. We're seeing it past 9 miles, right? That's a clear falsification of the globe model with a radius of 3959. Therefore, the Earth is not a sphere. And that's that. And every time these guys argue refraction or say the horizon's apparent, well, they're making our arguments. That's what you have to understand with this argument, is change the game, because now they're telling us, oh, the horizon's not physical. Oh, okay, well, thanks. That's what we've been telling you guys all this time. Boats aren't disappearing because of the curve. They're disappearing because of what? Atmospheric conditions, how high you are, what you can see that day. Everybody knows on a clearer day you can see further. But you can't see further than the ball that you have with its absolute dimensions can allow. That's ridiculous. That's like saying we live on a handball. It just moves up and down all day. You can't actually change the curve of the Earth. I'm sorry, Lemon. Go ahead. I'm done. Sorry,
No
I had
problem.
to get that in there.
You don't change the curve,
Thanks, guys.
you change the effects of what you can see. There's a big difference there.
Zanuck, please.
If I can jump in before Zanuck and before Lemon, because I was muted over 10 minutes ago, and I've been trying to get back in here. Nobody has actually addressed the guy's point or his question. He asked if it was reasonable to do this observation over multiple days. The short answer, thank you guys, was yes, and it has been. Hank pointed that out before he asked his question. It shouldn't have, 10 minutes shouldn't have went by for someone to point that out. Dude,
you just have to post in general chat that you want to be unmuted. We have like 100 mods. If you didn't ask to be unmuted, then that's why you're unmuted.
That's great. I get that. I was told that I had to wait for a duration. I don't care about that. I'm saying, team, Guy asked if it was reasonable to ask for the observation of the Black Swan over multiple days. It was already told to him, yes, we have multiple days. The same guy captured the same observation over multiple days. That's it. I don't even know what we're talking. Do you have any further questions?
On different days. We all know that, Elijah.
Okay, so I just wanted to say, yeah, I did say that, and I would like to point out that I posted a video. It's the Skunk Bay time lapse, right? And when you look at this video, you'll see all sorts of refractions happening, right? And you look at this time lapse video, and it's got a grid over it, so you can actually watch the apparent location of buildings and shores go up and down all over the place, and it's a whole lot of stuff happening. But what you don't see is the horizon like bending up and down like some sort of Hollywood film to where the earth is going concave, flat, and then spherical, and then back to flat, and then back to concave. Like, that's not what light does. Light doesn't like bend things around the curvature of the earth at 8 inches per mile squared. Like, what it does do is it causes like all sorts of lensing and magnification and stooping and all sorts of things, right? But it doesn't actually make a curved earth look flat, or a flat earth look curved, or a concave earth look flat, right? That's not what the light actually does.
Yeah, light does. It actually does curve.
Well,
It curves
that
based
comes
on
from a
differential medium and angle of incidence. We all know that.
Well, that comes from a very theory-laden assumption of how light behaves based off of actual glass lenses. But most of the time, light tends to travel by the inverse square law and spread out equally from a central focal point. And so these theories of refraction being able to lift the image in one direction over globe curvature without equally being magnified in all directions, left, right, up, and down, is very ad hoc, very theory laden, and has no consistent philosophy behind it. It's like they're saying that the light can be lifted up like a laser over a boundary without going equally in all directions in the same level of magnification or refraction. That's the problem. The theory laden assumption of how light would refract over the ball.
Yeah, can I make another observation? Well, I'm on about the people who believe in a globe. Any of you guys heard of that, man? No. Okay. I'll present the observation. This guy did an observation infra 1,200 miles, and there should have been 119,000 meters of curvature. It's flat as a pancake, guys. I'll post the stuff in there and the observations. He did them at 35,000 feet, if I'm correct, thereabouts. I'll post the observation anyway. He's got a video. He's got lots of videos with 600-mile observations, flat as a pancake, no curvature, thus no ball. Okay, cheers.
I posted some experiments.
Hey everyone,
They show
today I'm going to
that,
be
in
showing you a
fact,
crazy...
depending on the type of medium and the density of the medium and the different type of medium, light does bend. I mean, we tried this also in our university. It's something that we also have proven. So all I'm saying is that it is possible within the realm of possibilities that something happened and it appeared that way. It's a little bit miscalculated, maybe. Because I've seen pictures, hold on, I've seen pictures of Black Swan, the exact same two oil rigs, where the oil rig at the far behind, at the far back, is actually behind the horizon. And someone posted this picture multiple times and the recorded event chat, and nobody seems to talk about it. Why is that?
Does the existence of that, I'm sorry to cut you off, does the existence of that picture negate the existence of the other one by any chance?
Not necessarily. I'm just showing you that.
No, it's a yes or no question. Does that
No, I don't answer yes or no.
does that picture, you don't answer yes or no question?
No.
Does that picture negate the existence of the other picture, which is the impossibility on your globe model? Yes or no question?
Negate the existence. It doesn't.
You have
Thank
video
you.
of that
Thank you.
observation. So
Thank you
the
for that
fact
concession. Sorry.
someone has taken another picture and made it appear as though the horizon is in front of that other oil rig. That's not the case when you actually look at the video feed of that. So that is just someone trying to be deceptive. When we're talking about things on horizon and you saying that light bends, therefore curvature, you need to prove that light bending actually causes things to, curve upward from their original position, which is a fixed position called the geometric horizon, which is a mathematical equation that necessitates a ball, that it actually does that. And until you do that, that argument is null and void. It's a fallacy from the onset of it. Things, just because light bends, it doesn't bend around corners and makes you able to see things around corners. You would have to have a mirror for that to happen. It doesn't bend things behind from the physical barrier of the earth and make you be able to view them as a flat plane. That just doesn't happen. When you're talking about light bending, you're talking about through the atmosphere as it relates to things that you're viewing on the horizon, not the actual horizon itself, because that is an apparent place that changes based off of your position, not the objects on the horizon, which are can be distorted, and that's all that it does. It does not show that it bends things up for you to see. If that were the case, it would have to do that in all directions and down and up into the sky, yet you never see that.
And also, this is a highly theoretical, theory-laden way that light behaves like a laser. The question becomes, the laser's being shot from a laser pointer. Are you seeing the laser light coming from the laser pointer or the pointer itself? Because the laser coming from the laser pointer may travel much differently than the actual light from the laser pointer. That's highly theory-laden, number one. Number two, if all light behaved as that coherent laser beam, quite literally, when we look at objects that are emitting light, it would burn our eyes. That coherent laser beam travels much differently than most of the light that we see in real life, number two. Number three, the way that light goes to the eye still isn't fully understood. You could, put your fingers around the moon. From your vantage point, and somebody off to the side from you would see you looking up at an object, putting your fingers around something that may not match where they're putting their finger around, the light from the moon. It's showing you that, the image brought to your eye is highly subjective and not just this laser that follows one path to the observer. So these are extremely theory-laden assumptions about light that may not really hold.
But also, this goes to the point of like when the Chocolate's question of does one picture negate of the other? Like, how many black swans do you need as a zoologist to then confirm that not all swans are white? I mean, how many do you need? Does that make sense? I mean, does one black swan negate all of that? I mean, how many negates the notion?
I'll tell you what, because the zoologist, when he goes to the black swan, he take a picture. One day it appears black, he go to the same swan, and then it appears to be white. So there must be some mystery behind that. That if the same swan appears to be different in two occasions, that's why I'm raising the question. Maybe the atmospheric conditions
but just
plays
pointing out that. Well, sorry, but pointing out more white swans doesn't. Yeah, we all know that the swans can be white. As soon as you see a couple of the black swans. Well, no, but how do you know it's the same one? I mean, it's the same observation.
It's the same to all areas.
Kind of mixing up. You're mixing up the. How do you know it's the? Did you tag that one black swan, or did you just sort of come back another day and expect to see a different one? I'm just, you don't see the analogy here. You're kind of.
I see the analogy, and I'm telling you.
Unless you're just trying to say the swan can just be white.
All I want to
black.
say is to answer the gentleman's direct question, it only takes one black swan to prove that not all swans are white. Literally only one. Because it only takes one exception to prove that the rule is not universal. So if there's even one black swan, then not all swans are white, period.
I'm going to say,
very much.
May I elaborate more?
Appreciate you coming
Somebody's
to
got
that
some
succinct
distortion
point about that.
May I elaborate more on my example?
Hold on,
I want to explain my
Jesus,
position.
why is there so much echo? One at a time, please. Sorry.
Yeah, so with your analogy of the black swan, I totally agree. It only takes one black swan to destroy the whole hypothesis. But my analogy is that you go to the exact same swan. Someday it appears to be black, and someday it appears to be white, because we go to the same oil rigs that you guys are taking pictures of, and apparently the oil rig at the far back, some days it's behind the horizon for some unknown reasons,
My
and
friend,
some days it's in front of the horizon. This is not about white
my
swans and
friend,
black swans. It's about the same swan being black and white at different days. That's why I'm asking. Maybe we should take pictures on different days and different weather conditions to assist actually if this is a black swan or a white swan.
I told you before, right? Hold on, let me take this. I told you before, that is a red herring because they are different observations. I know you think they're the same because they've taken pictures of the same thing, but why don't you give me the location of the observer in that other still, or his actual height?
How about this?
Because we can provide you that with the person that we have sourced our information from. Can you do the same is all I'm asking.
All you have to do is use those same pictures that you have. Use your pictures and measure the angular position of those objects in the distance and see the difference on different days. Why are they changing? Are they being lifted up by some jack stand? No.
They're not changing.
I'm still talking. Yes, they do change. You can measure their angular position. We don't even need an angle gauge on that picture or a MRAD scale. All you need to do is measure their respective position with each other. Can I make that any more clear? Their position with respect to each other determines whether you have some change in refraction or not. Period.
Does its refraction change the distance of the observer to the oil rig?
No, it changes.
No, I'm trying to challenge.
I'm answering a question. Someone asked me a question. It changes the position of the horizon, the point of obscurity. Horizon is something that obscures.
Would that make the horizon apparent?
I'm still talking.
Okay, guys, hold on.
All right, guys, everyone be quiet. Everybody be quiet for a second. So please remind yourselves of our rules. You'll go to rules channel, I'll post them in general. Only one person speaks at a time. So when someone is still on their turn, you cannot speak over them until they're finished, and then you will have your turn and no one will speak over you. So I don't know the name of the gentleman who was speaking, but please one at a time, because otherwise it is not possible to tell what people are saying, and it's not productive.
Thank you. So the point is, the horizon will move, the point of obscurity, the point where objects are being obscured. That horizon does move further or closer away depending on conditions. The way we can tell what's happening is the angular position in your level line of sight to those objects. We have two objects, which is great. So if they change with respect to one another, the angle is changing by definition, and that has to be caused by an optical effect. That's the story. That's what you need to understand.
But the thing that we also need to understand is we
You're
have
only going to hand wave it? Just hand wave it.
Yeah, but we can solve this problem, Xander.
No, the microphone passed to the new speaker now. Yes.
Okay, but at least if you're gonna eject, why don't you address what I said, Lemon, rather than bring it up.
Let him have his turn now. You had yours, now he has his.
Thank you.
But we can't address what you're saying, Zanuck, unless we address the two philosophies that are at play here. Your side is saying that the horizon is physical and tends not to change and be a baseline from which to make observations. The other side is saying that it is purely optical and can vary even in itself as an optical representation. Your side is saying that, but it's saying that there is a baseline physicality from which the optics are derived. The other side is saying there is no physicality on that level. At best, you're having a plane that is converging into your eye line, and it's just angles converging into your eye line, generating an image that looks like a horizon, but if you walk up to that horizon, it'll be below your feet and reveal itself as nothing more than an optical representation of converging visual angles in the eye line. So if you're going to have your theory-laden assumption of what's happening with refraction, you need to decide whether it is actually physical or if there's any sort of physical basis for it, and or if it is mostly optical converging angles that can vary in different refractive conditions, say over a flat plane.
That is called obfuscation defined. Obfuscation defined.
Look, guys, the short answer to Zanuck was yes. Yes, that is true. However, you're trying to pass off one observation for another. That's red herring.
No,
the whole point is, don't say no and don't interrupt me, because I've waited. Now, what we're talking about was the same observation that BMLS, or I'm sorry, I forget his exact name, the same observation that he took. Anyone that goes into that spot, which you can look up on Google Earth, you know exactly where he was, the picture that the still that you see, the video that you see, it's going to pretty much show up the same. That's why he did it on different days. The other shot where the water is in the way and it seems like the horizon is closer and blocking the oil rigs, that is a different location. You're trying to say it is. I'm saying prove it. Give us the information, the source information from that video, or I don't know what we're talking about.
Are you bald?
Don't have evidence of curvature for the baseline of your theory-laden refraction behavior. We need curvature first. So if you really want to prove it, prove the curvature first.
But Zanuck, in the text chat, we were talking in the text chat, and I asked you specifically if you were saying that refraction was raising the oil rigs up so that you could see the horizon behind the oil rigs, and you said yeah. And this is the thing. It doesn't matter what the oil rigs are doing. It's the fact that the horizon is even there and can even be seen there that the sphere cannot exist with the geometric horizon not existing. It's not there.
That's incorrect. So what I said, and I'll say it again, the objects are being loomed up due to downward refraction. If the objects are being loomed up and there was a horizon in front of it, it is now behind it by definition because you can see the object. The only thing we're talking about with the horizon is a point of obscurity, where things are being obscured. And by definition, if something's loomed up, it's not being hidden anymore. If you can see it, it's not being hidden. So the point at where it's being hidden would be the point of obscurity, which is therefore the horizon. It's behind it now, or maybe at it. If you look at the pictures very carefully with a critical eye, you can see there is some things slightly hidden on the bottom of the further oil well. So that's probably right around where the horizon is, but still, I agree, it's 9 times further than where it should be. But that's due to the refraction, and that can be determined and verified by the angular position of those objects with respect to your level field of view.
Are you really?
So if I can respond really quick, actually, you know that this observation was simulated, trying to get this custom refraction that you're talking about, and it looks hard for you. Do you have a response?
What simulate? You talking about the Bislin calculators?
Any simulation that you try to make that fit on the ball with a radius of 3,959 miles, the rays that they're going to use in the custom refraction tool is going to look really wonky.
Well,
right or wrong?
Well, no, not any, because I've seen many simulators that actually show that almost to the T, almost the exact.
Well, can you give one? Can you give one? Because I have some. I have
one. You said, can I? So I have one. But number two, God, what are you going to
give it, please.
Elijah, please. So I have one.
Yeah, just one at a time.
Number two, you can't possibly have all the factors in the calculator because there's almost an infinite amount of factors. The density variations along the way is what we're talking about. The angle of incidence and the differential density. Those are most important. Not the temperature. Yet the temperature is the most dominant feature in the calculator, and it's not when you look at the refraction calculation in detail.
But
I don't want to keep making talking points based off of assumptions. I would like for Zanuck to please post the scientific definition and proof that looming applies to the horizon.
It's implied. No one has it broken down that simplistic because it's obvious to everybody in the scientific community that because the horizon is only a reference point of obscuring objects that are behind it.
You're showing that you're being intellectually dishonest if you cannot provide a definition for looming.
Guys, one at a time. Absolutely, one at a time. 2 minutes each at least at a turn.
Yes.
Meaning you have up to that time without interruption. Sorry.
You must provide proof of your claims. You cannot make claims that go against the actual definitions as to what refraction is. When you're talking about them, there are 5 points to them. And you stated that looming applies to the horizon, that it lifts things in front of it or behind it. And so I'm asking you where you got that information and would like for you to please provide that, because the understanding and information that the official narrative is that it applies to things on the horizon, not the actual horizon itself. So
it's
if
in the
you could
chat.
please provide that information
God,
and
that's 4
don't give me lip
times.
service. Don't give me lip service. Just post that in
God,
the chat.
I just posted it.
Zanuck, please don't interrupt.
And over again. Yes, 4 times. So there's the response. No lip service. It's in the chat.
All right, Zanuck, the thing is, it would only be by implication if you had a consistent philosophy to guide you to the unspoken implication. If the horizon is based off of compressed angles, the refraction would happen relative to the horizon, going up and down, left and right from the horizon as the converging point of all those angles. If it's actual Earth curvature and just an optical representation of that, perhaps what you say could be correct, but we have to decide which philosophy is valid and can be used for the implications and the interpretations of the experiment. But at the very least, there is no geometrical support for the globe being way further than it would be represented optically with light coming straight to your eye from where it is represented geometrically. So at the very least, we're only going to get optical support for a globe. What optical support do we see? Pi-like curvature left to right, bowing up and down with obvious prima facie evidence? No. All we seem to have is obstruction. So at that point, this question reduces down to, is the only thing that causes what we interpret as obstruction a hump of Earth curvature or compressing optical angles? That is what the question reduces to, flat or round.
Well said, Lemon.
So does anyone else have another comment on flat Earth? We can continue. We have no time limit for this. We're going to continue as long as the conversation continues.
I was going to see if there's anybody here who hasn't had a chance to speak yet, if anybody has any opinions or comments other than that 7 people who have been talking for the past little while. If anyone else has anything to say anything, hasn't said anything, please say it now because we'd love to hear you.
Yeah, just wanted to say hi real quick. Thanks for having me. This is Pillbox, and I sent Chocolate saying a little PM for a picture if he wants to use. Since we're talking about looming, I got to ask about this photo. If this is also looming, if Chocolate wants to use that, I'll put it in the chat if he doesn't see it.
So we can eliminate refraction with infrared. So you guys can just cross that off the board.
No, you can't eliminate with infrared. It just makes it less effective. Longer
There you go.
wavelengths are just less affected than shorter wavelengths.
There you go. So the picture never changes.
It should. Now that's a good point though, actually. So what I would do is I would take it and don't talk about filters, talk about actual infrared laser. Okay, that way you can actually take pictures on the same day, same time with different frequency of light and see if it changes. If it does change, then there's refraction going on. Because if there's no refraction, then all the pictures would be identical. So that's a great point. I thought about that a while ago, but I haven't heard it spoken in a long time. So good point.
Zanuck, do boats go over the horizon?
You're breaking up.
Do boats go over the horizon?
Correct.
Even so, Neil deGrasse Tyson is incorrect.
Neil deGrasse, I don't know what he said. What did he say? What did Neil deGrasse Tyson say? That boats don't go over horizon?
No, that you can't see the curvature at 120,000
Well,
feet.
that's not what he said. So you completely mistook what he said. I mean, talk about turning things upside down and backward.
What did he say?
He said boats don't go over the horizon. Then you translated that to mean you can't see the curvature. See how that's non sequitur?
Well, yeah, but if boats are supposed to be going over the curvature, then I should be able to see the curvature.
You can see the effects
if I can see the curvature at 3, I'm pretty sure I was talking. If I can see a boat going over the curvature at 3 miles, or however many miles you're going to see that day, then how does that translate to 120,000 feet not being able to see?
Good question. So you can see the effects of curvature, but you can't see curvature. Should I explain?
The effects of curvature, like the pseudo for like. Never mind. I can't.
Yeah. Go there.
ahead.
Go to pseudo. I'd love for you to go that direction, pal.
Yes, the
Seriously.
effects like being able to measure curvature. That would be an effect. Being
No,
able
that's
to
not an
measure
effect.
it.
That's a measurement.
Sure.
Like
is.
being able to
we
measure
measure
things that don't
it
exist.
flat, therefore it's curved, right?
No,
We
if I
measure
see a
flat,
horizon drop,
therefore it's curved.
if I see a horizon drop,
The only
that
thing
is
that
the
I
effect.
really
Please
have
stop
heard
talking
is
over each other,
Zanuck,
please. One at a time. Thank you.
Making an argument that his explanation of the
I
black
was just giving a
swan
response,
is that
Elijah, and you jumped
it's
in.
optical and the
Elijah,
horizon is apparent.
just giving a response.
That was literally
You're
Zanuck's
still
response.
talking over me. Okay.
Yeah, I am still talking.
I was talking,
Right.
and you talked over me. Listen, the
Zanuck, you
effect.
talk
Right,
over
but you've been
everybody.
talking. You've had
No, I
Listen,
was
regardless,
I'm trying
everybody
to.
yield the mic at once to establish order, and then one person go first, and let the other people go after that. So I don't care who goes first, but we'll have no arguments. Next, a mic is open. Take it.
I'll yield. Go ahead. Finish your point.
I'm just trying to point out to can I be heard? Am I muted?
You're listening.
Yeah, I hear you, man.
Clear. All I'm trying to do is point out, if you heard Zanuck, if you listen to the words that he was saying, right? Because Zanuck is one of those slicksters, right? He's going to try to fool people. And I'm not trying to shit on him, but this is what he's done. I have the experience with him. Now, if you listen to the words that he said, his argument against the black swan was that the horizon, the first thing he said was, it's apparent, right? And then at the end, he tried to fix it with it's completely an optical phenomenon. Refraction, optics, apparent. That was his response to the black swan. Nothing to do with his physical geometric horizon, which is supposed to be at 1.2 miles at a 1 foot height observation. So again, like I said before on my little rant, the argument has changed to, it's the physical curve of the earth that's obscuring these boats. Well, that's not what it is anymore, is it, Zanuck? It's optical, right? It's apparent, right? Again, welcome to flat Earth.
No,
I'm done.
No. How are you supposed to measure something that doesn't exist?
Can I respond or no?
How do you measure something that's not visible?
I love you to respond because you said, he said, you said. That was quite confusing as well with your words.
Yeah, he's a master at that as well. Complete obfuscation. So let me be very clear about this. There is.
Who are you talking about?
So
Meaning
I'm
you would fix that right there.
Okay, once one person is speaking, then nobody else speaks. That's how we do things here. That's why we have 60, 70 people in an orderly fashion, because once one person has the mic, everyone else knows they can't talk.
My bad, bro.
So the refraction is caused by multiple factors. Number one, the angle of incidence, most important. Then the differential medium, number two. And the wavelengths of light, number three. And so, yes, the curvature of the Earth does create the refractive conditions. And yes, refraction causes the horizon to become further away from the observer. And yes, we can see the effects of curvature by something disappearing beyond it. That doesn't mean you can see the curvature, meaning some type of angle change in the surface in front of you, but you can see things either not being there or being there. And so let me summarize by saying, by looking at something as simple as where the horizon is with respect to level determines what the shape of the surface beneath you is. It's called the horizon drop. And that you can't see the curve, but that does prove mathematically that the surface beneath you is curved. That's all I'm saying.
That it's optical. Again, you said it. Everybody listening to this guy?
Optical.
The thing is everybody listening to him? How he's speaking about refraction? It will not address why your geometric horizon should be at 1.2 miles at a 1 foot observer height, my friend. And
because
it's
you have
further than 9 miles.
Because of
you guys don't have the math
Guys,
for that. Refraction.
you
Listen,
can't-
listen.
hold on, for fuck's sakes. I explained this, right? You can't shout over people your point. You can't yell over them to clarify your point while they're speaking. You can't do that. You have your turn, you yield the mic, you listen. You don't go, oh, this, that, over what they're saying. No. You get your turn, then you yield the mic, okay? And two, also, we have something called family vibe, so we have to be respectful and nice. You can't be shitty with each other, period.
Well, I don't mean to be shitty. It's that I've had many back and forths with this guy and guys like this because unfortunately what they're doing is double speaking. And if you're listening to this and if you, I don't know if this is being recorded, you can go back, listen to his responses, right? again, our argument is, yes, the horizon is apparent. It's literally the definition of the word horizon, the apparent position between where the earth meets the sky. Okay, it's as simple as that. And now, after this argument, what we are being told is that we don't see the geometric horizon. Again, they used to call that the curve of the earth. If you are listening to his responses, what he's telling you is, yeah, the curve of the earth is still there, but because of all this stuff going on in the atmosphere, we don't see it, but it's still there, right? So now we're seeing what's a horizon at 9 miles? Further than that? Again, that's the point.
Important. What Chocolate is saying
proves it.
Go ahead,
Well,
Mary.
it's just he said the math proves it, but you can't see the thing to make the value to put into your math. So how did you use the math equation to prove what you're standing on if you can't see the thing you're measuring?
The important thing I just wanted to highlight before we get away from what Chocolate said is, in back into these weeds and these details, please just let me say this. What Chocolate is highlighting and what's important for people who might be new to the Flat Earth debate is, even though we've just shown logically, and even one of the sirs from this server explained the whole concept of a mathematical model, such as the globe model, the fantasy globe model, is disproven with one observation that shows you the numbers wrong. So you have people like Zanuck, their purpose is to, and I'm saying this for the audience if you're new to it, their purpose is just to make you think there's a debate or argument. They know they can just say a bunch of words and, half the people won't even pay attention. And we'll think, oh, he's got an answer for that. But if you examine the answer, which is what Chalco was trying to say, you'll see there is no answer. That's why they have to just go off into another direction when you show them the simple facts that the globe model is a complete failure, and that, like many people who lie, they are for whatever reason, they're not going to go back and say this house of cards we built on this nonsense that we get billions of dollars a year for. Whoops, guess we messed up on that one. No, most people who have dug themselves into a hole will just keep on digging and hope you don't notice. And that's what NASA does, and that's what Zanuck does.
Allow me to.
I'm sorry. Hold on. Moderation, real quick. I'm sorry, Mary Mom, but what you just said, it seems that it was very insulting towards Zanuck, because I think Zanuck has really good points, and it bothers me that this server has a very family vibe, and that went against our family vibe. It's very rude to discredit somebody else. Don't interrupt me, or I'll just. I'm telling you.
I apologize for violating your family vibe. I will now exit your server and go cook dinner for my family in my family vibe. So I'll leave you to your family vibe.
Yeah, don't call your kids liars and digging themselves out of holes and all the other insultive things you said.
Why are you talking about our kids?
Because she's talking about the family. We're all family here. Remember the family vibe.
That's beside the point. Let's carry on with the discussion for as long as we want to discuss Flat Earth. We'll continue, and we'll be respectful, and we'll take turns. That's it. And when we're done, we'll be done. So if you guys want to continue, I'm good for a time.
So
Zanuck, it loses because it's lit up, right?
I mean, I had a question earlier, and honestly, it hasn't been answered. I asked about an experiment that actually proves that the Earth is rotating, and all I've seen is some people pivoting and actually evading the question itself. In fact, one of the flat earthers' community or society has one of his followers buy a gyroscope laser machine, which is very a precise gyroscope machine, and they have predicted, according to the globe model, that I think it rotates at an angle of 15 degrees. I don't know, every hour or every minute. I'm not quite sure. I can't really remember the measurements. And it appeared that he says that it's actually rotating. The gyroscope, this $20,000 equipment, is actually showing the Earth is rotating. There is movement. And nobody mentioned that. Even if I asked you guys whether you guys heard about an experiment, and you guys refrained from telling the truth.
The thing is, he did answer with Aries failure, but you didn't hear that.
I heard
Aries,
that.
If you're not familiar with it, was a guy looking at the stars with a telescope. It was known that you can't point the telescope directly at the stars. You have to tilt it at an angle to get the star to come into the telescope the right angle because something is moving. The assumption was that the Earth and the stars were moving, but he wanted to figure out, is the Earth really moving with the stars or not? To illustrate what happens with the syllogism in the experiment. If neither you nor the stars were moving, you could point it right at a star without having to angle it at any sort of extra amount at all. If either you and or the stars are moving, you have to tilt it because the light is going to be moving and coming in like rain coming down from the sky straight down. But the moment you run into the rain, you got to kind of angle your umbrella a little bit. It's kind of like that with the light. So they said, if the Earth is moving with the stars, I can fill this telescope with water and it will slow down the light even more to the point where I have to tilt the telescope even more. So he basically said, it basically reduced to proving the Earth is moving by having to fill the telescope with water and tilt the telescope to get it in the right angle since the Earth is also moving. He filled it with water, but he found he did not have to tilt the telescope anymore. It was already coming in at the right angle because, by implication, the stars were moving while the Earth was not. Otherwise, if the Earth was moving, he could calculate how much he'd have to tilt the telescope to get the stars to come in at the right angle. So Aries failed, Nathaniel Biddle Airy at that time failed to prove the movement of the Earth with the water in the telescope.
Wasn't that experiment to prove the existence of something called ether, or are you trying to change the whole premise or the goal of that experiment?
Well, the thing with this stuff is to see if the data back the conclusion. This implication can't really be addressed. Why didn't he need to tilt this telescope anymore with the water in the telescope to slow the light? Because the Earth isn't moving. So the
No.
data backs up that the Earth is not moving.
I don't know how you could get anything about the ether with a telescope and starlight. I fail to see how that has anything to do with an ether test.
Well, I read the aerial experiments. I've seen the calculation they have did, and I know why it's called the biggest failure in the scientific experiment. It was exactly to see the effect. They had this assumption that there's something called ether outside our planet, and they wanted to know exactly if the ether has any responsibility of slowing the speed of light or changing the path of light it takes. So what you have seen is witnessed is someone taking the experiment and changing and tuning the goals of the experiment. The experiment wasn't intended to actually measure the Earth rotation. It was to measure the existence of the ether, which was failed to prove the existence of ether because they had certain ideas of what the ether can do, but it was all wrong. It failed miserably. But you still didn't talk about my experiments that I mentioned. What about the experiment? Hold on.
Can you cite your source?
Hold on. What about the experiment with the gyroscope laser that one of you guys, the Flat Earth Societal Committee, I don't know what his organization is called, to prove the Earth is rotating, and in fact, it proved that the Earth is rotating.
So you had a very particular thing in mind when you were making your statement. The thing is, unexpected things come out of experiments all the time, but that's why in these cases and in a court of law, we use reality and other indicators to arrive at the truth other than what they plainly state. It's like saying, in this experiment, we were looking for the ether, let's only focus on the ether, coming to a court of law saying, we weren't meaning to do this crime, let's focus on their poverty or something else other than the crime that was committed. You use other indicators in reality to figure out what's going on, whether or not they're trying to get to the ether. But back to what you really wanted to know, that 15-degree quote unquote drift of the gyroscope in that Netflix video or whatever, that can be explained with the ether moving over an unmoving Earth. So you need to look into the other paradigms that can also explain the observation other than saying it has to be the rotation of the Earth through a vacuum. It could be this geostationary, unmoving Earth with ether moving over it, making the gyroscope precise.
Show me an experiment that proves that the ether exists. There's no experiment that shows that it exists. Show me.
But this is beyond the point, because if the gyroscope is proving the Earth's rotating underneath it, why don't we see that with drones, helicopters, planes, bullets, or footballs?
Let me
There are
point out a few things about this gyro, whatever you keep bringing up. The gyroscope is a bad look for you, and we're not the Flat Earth Society. The gyroscope is not independent of the Earth, therefore it would be rotating with the Earth. It is also a mechanical object created by man. It has a motor, and it requires someone to put it into motion. That does not prove the motion of the Earth. You have two mitigating factors which you cannot negate from that, which is the fact that it's still attached to the Earth, and it needs an outside force for it to move at all. If you want to prove that the Earth is rotating, you need to have an external observation of said movement, which no one has done to this date to prove that the Earth is moving. If you assume that the Earth is moving based off of mechanical man-made objects, you're not looking at a natural phenomenon. And to be more poignant, at what rate do you think that the Earth should be moving and the gyroscope should be moving independently of it? Because we're said to be going a certain speed, yet we don't experience that speed whatsoever. And it doesn't apply to any of the objects. If you were to apply that speed to the object, it should be moving with the Earth at the same rate of speed. 1,000 miles per hour of speed would definitely be felt. Yet you don't see that on these objects. You see a slower speed, supposedly, and that doesn't jive with the model. It doesn't match up.
And also,
I would like to.
Sorry.
May I respond? So it shows that the lack of knowledge of you guys having on physics and the conservation of momentum, it clearly shows that you have very wrong understanding on how the physics of the world works. When you have an object in a constant speed, there's no acceleration forces, or there's no acceleration effect or phenomenon, you would not feel that the Earth or that object is moving. The same example, if you're on a train on a constant speed, you wouldn't feel that the train is moving unless you look outside the train and you see things goes backward. The same thing is happening on the Earth. The small changes in the movement of the Earth is so minute your body can't see it. The same thing that your senses, your hearing senses, is so fallible. It's so flawed that you can only see a certain amount of frequencies, and the same thing that you can see a very small amount of frequencies of the visible light. It shows that we are beings not created into exactly feeling those very minute changes that has actually no impact on our lives.
But the problem is this demonstrates the failure of your philosophy yet again. The most constant, unchanging movement that we have available tends to be a straight line. So a rotating movement around an axis, around a pole, is inherently less constant and more changing because you have to change direction constantly from a straight standard to going around the axis. So what you say has no philosophical basis, let alone, I would say, actual real life basis. Also, number two, the mass of the object needs to be examined here, because the amount of mass that you need to move and change the direction, or the amount of energy rather, that you need to move and change the direction of a top, is a whole lot different than the amount of energy to change the direction of a mass like a wrecking ball Earth. So this force would be increasingly felt as you increasingly need to change the direction of the huge object to go around the central axis.
On top of the
Let me
fact
do some
that
clarification
what
on
you're
that real quick.
saying-
When you're changing the dynamics of you're creating a red herring when you say that, because you're talking about enclosed systems, planes, buses, etc. Of course you wouldn't feel acceleration with those because you're on the inside of something. You take the top off or peel back the top of a plane and put someone in it going 500 miles per hour, you would feel that acceleration. In order to have constant speed, you need to be accelerating at the same speed all of the time. No one here doesn't feel motion. No one here feels vector speeds that we're said to be going in all different directions. If you're going to ignore your ear, which is you have an inner ear with cochlea that senses if you're upright, moving, swaying, or about to fall off balance. You sense any little bit of motion to the 0.3 degree. So the fact that you're trying to change the argument up is a null point.
No.
We are on the outside of a ball. We're not on the inside of an apparatus. We're on the outside layer of the Earth that is said to be going 1,000 miles per hour through a galaxy and a solar system that's speeding around at 67 miles per hour on an elliptical. So after an elliptical turn, we would most definitely feel that vector speed.
No, you don't. Because
Also,
you don't
hold on
feel
a sec.
speed, you feel change with speed only. You do not feel
Yeah.
speed. You're incorrect. Your cochlear in your ear is like an accelerometer. It only feels changes. So if you're going 1,000 miles an hour and you're not changing speed, you don't feel it. There's no forces acting on you. Now, if we claim the Earth rotates around a big circumference, like a 25,000 mile circumference, 3,900 mile radius, then there is some turn, some change of direction, which is part of a velocity. And that is so slight that it's adding, it's sort of subtracting 0.3% to your weight. So it's a very small force acting, which again, well beyond limits of human perception. And let me know if you know what that term means.
Well, then why do snipers
67,000
account for
miles
it?
per hour is not a slight change. You're not going a slight speed, and you never address the fact that
Change,
on the
remember,
outside
change.
of a wall, we're not on the inside of an apparatus going in a straight line.
You're not listening.
You're changing the understanding of what it means to sense
No.
and feel motion or speed. You would need to prove that at going at any rate of speed that you would not sense or feel that, because that is not our lived experiences when you're in a car. If you had a drop top car or the top off of a plane, you, sir, would not be able to withstand the forces that it takes to stay in accelerated mode.
Yeah,
And
if it's such a minor effect, why do snipers account for it? The bullet's on the air for like 5 seconds. If they account for it, then planes that are up in the air for hours would have to account for this. But if you guys are saying that it's so small or minute, it's measurable at 15%, 15 degrees per hour, yet it's so small that we don't actually affect it, we don't perceive it, then what are snipers doing? Like, for real.
And also,
For
Zanuck,
real? Was that a question to me, Lemon?
No, it was not you, the person who asked it initially, or who was explaining how it was so slow that
Well, it's
we
got to
wouldn't
be.
perceive
Well,
it.
I
So
did talk about
not you, the other person who was talking.
right, but the velocity is not changing, so you don't
So
feel
yeah,
anything.
not you, the other
I
person
was
who
talking the
asked the
truth.
question.
I was talking the truth. She talked before you. I'm responding to her. Let me,
You guys, just settle down. Like, it
Go ahead.
doesn't matter, but just one at a time is all that you need to remember.
No, he's going to obfuscate the question. We're talking to the person who actually.
We'll see
said
whether he
it's
does or
true.
not, but one at a time, it doesn't matter. Whoever
yeah,
speaks
it's
first.
my turn, and I'll adjust both of you. But it's my choice. So truth is mistaken again twice. I already explained to her very detailed that the change of velocity is what you feel. You don't feel a constant velocity. And put an analogy of the car and the top down going 1,000 miles an hour in the air. You know, what do you think would cause the problem there? You have air that's not moving 1,000 miles an hour, so that differential speed would cause tremendous forces, and yeah, you would be very uncomfortable. But on the Earth, everything's moving the same speed. So the reason you don't feel the speed because you're not changing the speed. You're only changing the direction very, very slightly. So that answered that question.
But Zanuck, the problem with your philosophy is it has no way to address internal forces. All of the forces are external. Therefore, the only recourse that matter would have in your philosophy eventually would be to fly apart. What about the internal forces that allow a thing like a moving plane to move at great speeds without flying apart? Perhaps when an object moves, there is an interplay between the very real external forces on the plane and the internal forces to keep it together. These internal forces could result in the inertia where you don't feel like you're moving when you actually are moving through a medium. But that fails with the Earth because, as far as we can tell, the Earth is an open system. Therefore, the only thing that we could see to act on the Earth would be external forces, which would pull it apart. So where in your paradigm can you fit anything about internal forces? Nowhere. It's all about external gravity, external forces, external pulls, external pushes, nothing about the internal forces within this stuff. We need a new paradigm, possibly over a flat plane.
Have you heard of the atmospheric gradient?
Yes.
Do you know that the pressure from the top to the bottom is different?
In a contained firmamental system, yes.
Yeah, well, just because, like, if you look at, for instance, like a meteor entering the atmosphere, it's not going to slow down, it's going to speed up because it's trying to match the rotation of the Earth.
The Earth doesn't move. No experiment has proved that it moves one jot or one tittle.
Yeah,
You
that's
can
a
only have
presupposition.
you can only have gradient pressure in a container. That's why it's called pressure and not gradient. No non-pressure.
Has to have something.
You know,
Actually, according to gas
the
law,
one
you do not have gradients in a container. You'd have an equilibrium of pressure throughout the container. The only way you
Exactly.
have gradient,
That's
the only way
gradient.
you have gradient, just to explain further, the only way you have a gradient is if there is a force acting on those gases or the atmosphere or whatever you have inside the container. So, right.
We already.
It just would have to settle. It would just equal when the gases find equilibrium. They could just be heavier and lighter gases. There's no force. It's just
Good
equilibrium.
point. So, how does it become heavier? What causes it to be heavier? Right? Heavier weight?
The
Isn't that a
nature
force?
of the density they're in.
What causes the density to cause it to form a gradient?
Well, Zanuck, we may not know yet, but
It's
we've
the
already
weight.
exposed how this paradigm is insufficient to address internal forces and all of the myriad forces we're probably missing on that end. So, at the very least, it's time for a new paradigm that can explain these new observations.
Oh, Lemon, you're exhausting.
I could say the same about you, Zanuck. Ease up on that.
Well,
Now, the one question I had as far as it comes to experiments, and I'm sure you guys are probably familiar with the Netflix special on flat Earth. I forgot what it's called, but at the very end, they hyped it up to do this one test. Right, they're going to prove there's flat once and for all, and it's a laser test, right? It's pretty simple. You take one laser, you go a certain distance from that laser, and you put up a piece of cardboard or something, with a target to see whether or not if it's straight, if you're on like an absolute flat plane. And I think I don't know if the terrain that they were using was completely flat, but that experiment it was an experiment that they were hyping up, and then they used it to disprove flat Earth at the end by showing that the laser did not match up with the target that it was expected to if the Earth was indeed flat. So I was going to ask any of you if you're familiar with that experiment and if it had any validity, and if so,
Well,
or if not, why.
Jaronism's video, what you're talking about, could have been from not collimating the laser properly, busting out the laser light, not pointing the laser properly, or any other myriad factors other than it being a ball. The main reason why most flat earthers say that we're probably not on a ball is the missing 8 inches per mile squared of curvature with long distance laser observations, infrared, and imaging.
That's that does help out a little bit, but I appreciate the answer. Well,
Yeah, I would like to
do
say
we have any
something
more
to that.
questions?
So I posted a picture of a carnival
Please
ride,
do.
and to me, it kind of represents like the sun and the earth, right? So on this carnival ride, I posted a picture. So you can see which one I'm talking about. It's on like a large merry-go-round that's spinning relatively slowly, right? But in this little seat that you ride in with your children, it has a wheel in the middle that you can like spin it and make it go faster and faster. Not the merry-go-round, but the little seat that you're in. So as you're on the inside of the curve, there's not a whole lot of G-force, but as you go around the outside of the curve, there's quite a bit of G-force. In fact, it's enough to make some people sick or crush little children, depending on who's riding and where and how much they've eaten. And I think that it's kind of telling, because if the Earth is going around the sun while spinning at the same time, like we would weigh different amounts on different parts of the day. And this is like just something that's a funny picture, something I'm thinking of, and it makes sense to me, but I guess not everybody in here is going to agree.
It makes a lot of sense. It looks like this gravity, is really just a metaphysical, philosophical, proposition. So at that point, we need to look at different philosophies and see what this philosophy can address and what it cannot.
I mean,
Yeah, we need wisdom. That's what I was trying to.
I mean, I would absolutely agree with Hank of what he said there. Exactly. Since we have an elliptical orbit around the sun, it's not perfectly a circle. Absolutely, the weight changes. It changes so minute, it's irrelevant.
It's funny that the Earth spins and it's irrelevant. The Earth curves, but you can't see it. It's, minute. And the refraction happens, but, it's negligible. You know what I mean?
It's
Yeah, it's always irrelevant, right? The curve. We don't see the curve. It's supposed to be curved. We're supposed to be spinning. There are supposed to be all these effects that are supposed to be happening, but it's so minute that it's just negligible, right? In order for us to believe the story that we're all on a magical spinning water ball flying around in a vacuum. Yeah, exactly.
But
Thank
snipers
you.
have to account for both rotation and curvature, but it's so minute that it's not.
Yeah. Instead of going with Occam's razor, saying, "Hey, if we don't feel
Hey guys,
that we're moving,
one at
then
a
we're
time
just
here,
not
guys.
moving."
Settle down, guys. One at a time.
That's all I was trying to point out.
Yeah,
Is that
beyond human
every
perception.
time you listen to their arguments, it's this is so negligible that it's minute. You can't feel it.
Beyond
It's
human perception.
beyond. Yeah, exactly. But yet we're supposed to be. You tell us a different story, though, right? You tell us that in order for us to believe the story that we're all stuck on the spinning water ball flying around in a vacuum. But every argument that you have is literally to tell us how we don't feel it, we don't experience it, we don't measure it.
We do measure
The
it.
same with the
We do
same
measure
thing with the curve. Where did you measure it? Movement, Zanuck?
Horizon drop in altitude.
The horizon drop is movement.
No, that shows the curve. Full-court pendulum.
That shows the curve that you said we don't see, but we see the effects.
Right.
Does everybody
Exactly.
hear what he's saying?
You gotta give each other like full turns, right? Like
See,
one
I
at a
can't.
time.
You got it. So you got the curvature indication with the measurement. Now the spinning measurement is the Foucault pendulum.
Everybody listen to the double speak.
No, there's no double speak there. Chuck, I'm just giving you the straight.
How does that pendulum start?
You let it go. You drop it.
Experiment over.
No, actually not. It starts when you let go of it.
Why does it have to be started?
Because it has to go.
Aren't we already moving?
You're dropping it.
Why is anything still? If that's supposed
If you guys
to
keep over talking each other, we're just gonna end the event because I'm not fucking around with this. You either follow the rules, the event's over. Stop interrupting each other. I'm done with it.
You drop the object. It's connected via this wood or string or something. It goes back and forth in a plane. The plane is not going to change or alter because that's one of Newton's first, second, and third laws. Right? So it's something in motion stays in motion until acted upon by another force. So it stays in that plane. But what you see is an object that is beneath it rotate. That shows rotation. Because the pendulum can't move in its plane. The only other answer is that the object beneath it is rotating. That's the full pendulum in a nutshell.
But Zanuck, wouldn't it be more accurate with the existence of internal forces that are not addressed by the inadequate heliocentric atomistic model to say object is going to keep moving the way that it's moving until external forces overcome the internal forces that govern its movement? Wouldn't that be a bit more accurate?
Isn't it odd that every time I give an explanation, you jump in and talk about some atomistic factors that completely obfuscates my answer so that no one learns or understands anything that was said?
I kind of have to do that because your paradigm is inadequate.
Okay.
Yes, your paradigm is inadequate and doesn't address internal forces. Everything's external.
Can you help us elaborate more about the internal forces and what's the difference? The definition of internal forces and external forces and how they're different. And can you give us an example in each, please? Thank you.
The internal force that keeps the object together, cohesive forces, adhesive forces, the forces that keep the thing from flying apart when it goes through space. How about those?
Have you looked at the heliocentric model or the paradigm that we work in? Have you seen any contradiction? And if you've seen any contradiction, can you point out which one are those contradictions, please?
Namely, no talk about the force needed to keep the Earth from flying apart when it is, flying through space and or changing direction while it's spinning around another object. There's no speech about that at all. There's just this implication that the Earth is just going to keep itself together at, I guess, any speed without flying apart.
Have you read the Newtonian laws and general relativity from Einstein explaining the movement of planetary objects and the effects of gravity, the force of gravity? Does those are not efficient enough to explain the phenomenon or the natural phenomenon that we see, or is there any contradictions in those theories?
Gravity was already disproven with helium flying away from the Earth, but I just reject the gravity paradigm being able to generate orbits and perfect balls. There may be another reason for why stuff tends to fall toward the Earth in most cases.
I see.
So I have a question. So how would you be able to account for the moon being pushed away by the Earth 1.6 inches or 6 centimeters per year, and our planet's rotation is actually slowing? So how would you account for that on a flat Earth?
On a flat Earth, the Earth does not move, therefore gravity is not universal on that level. The sun, moon, and stars may be revolving by another mechanism or in another medium that allows them to revolve and turn or whatever, but the Earth appears to be motionless at rest on pillars on top of a watery deep, if you go with the Hebrew cosmology, which I do. So the Earth does not appear to affect a spherical shape or move.
Well,
But
wait a second. Before we explain that, do you have any proof that it is doing what you just claimed? Or are you taking the word of NASA's government organization? Like, there's no way for you to prove that except for just believe what the authorities are telling you, right?
And or would you be able to prove that the moon isn't moving away?
No, but the point, we don't know what the moon is. NASA claims they do, and then they send people out there to play golf, and they're telling you that it's being pushed away by ever so slightly in a way that you can never determine for yourself. So just take our word for it. If until you can prove that that's what's happening, we have you don't have any evidence of that claim. Therefore, why even bother addressing it?
Get a telescope, look up in the sky.
You can determine that it's being pushed away at X amount of inches per year based on a telescope.
Well, this is what mathematics is for.
No,
I thought that was your refraction.
The question is, does that prove that we live on a spinning ball? Right? Because that goes back to the argument that we were talking about before, black swan. And this radius of the Earth. See, the problem is if the radius of the Earth, which a few times after the black swan argument has surfaced, we've been told, well, at best, you've disproven the radius of the Earth. Saying that nonchalantly, like that's not a big thing. But if the radius of the Earth is wrong, then all these other distances that you have, these distances to the sun, to the moon, it all goes out the window. Right? So what the moon is doing, and like what Fuzzy said before, we don't know what the moon is. They sent a few people up there to drive a dune buggy and play golf. Did they really tell you anything about the moon after that? No, not really. Matter of fact, in their narrative, they stopped going for some reason. Right? Who knows? Right? But if the radius is wrong, all that other stuff you're talking about is wrong, and you have to throw it out. So what the moon is doing, if it appears a little closer, it's a little further, all of that is based on the mathematics, the geometry of this globe. So at the end of the day, we have to come down to, is it actually a globe that we're living on or not? And all the evidence is out there that it's really not. We see too far, and the fact that we're moving, that's never been measured. And like I said, their argument is always to tell us how we're not moving, how we don't feel it. There's always an excuse to tell us why we don't feel it whenever we're asked. There's always a clever little trick, a cute little answer to tell you, right? Instead of just accepting the Earth as it presents itself to you. Everybody, I'm pretty sure everybody in this room experiences it as flat and stationary. I don't think anybody has gone anywhere and saw curvature with their own eyes. I don't think anybody in this room has ever felt movement. Maybe you were in an earthquake. I don't know. So, all right. So when the earth moves, we call it an earthquake. What's it doing when it's not quaking? See what I'm saying? So I'm somebody earlier. I'm sorry. I'm gonna eat dinner, so I'm done in 2 seconds. Right? Somebody before said, he called himself Earth shape agnostic, something like that, and he said that he felt like it was like maybe he's just too stupid to figure it out either way. And it's like I hate when people say that because you're taking away, you're not giving yourself enough credit, right? The earth presents itself as it is to you. The earth is not lying to you. When you go out, you see the earth, you don't feel movement, you don't see curve, you see it flat. You take off in an airplane, you see it flat. I mean, that's what it is. That's how it's presenting itself to you. But the problem comes is that now you're trying to match those observations with a story that you've been told, that it's not actually what you observe and experience every day. It's literally the opposite. It's a ball that's spinning around and flying around the sun at 66,000 miles per hour. But you don't experience any of that. So you're like, oh, I don't know, maybe I'm too stupid. Nah, man. People are not stupid. This nonsense has been fed to us since we were kids, right? It's a story. And now we're all looking at the evidence and saying, what the hell? This doesn't match my reality. But then we're told we're stupid. Yeah, all right, go ahead. I'm done.
I just got a quick question. Why is it that when you're on a plane going 500 miles an hour, you're not being pushed back in the seat, and how are you able to get up? How do you explain that?
Change in velocity. There's actually no change in velocity. If you're going 500 miles an hour and that velocity by definition is not changing, then you will not feel any force, because by definition, it takes a force to change velocity, whether it be in magnitude or direction, because velocity is what? Magnitude and vector. Got it?
Then well, that's why it helps. Wait, hold on. Why is it that when I'm in a car going super fast, it pushes me back in the seat, but when I get in a plane, it doesn't do that?
Only when you're accelerating.
So when a plane is taking off and accelerating, and I can move around and stuff,
pushed back at
only
takeoff?
when you're accelerating.
Takeoff, not as much as in a fast car. Hold on, let me finish my point. I know how aviation works because I study it, but when I'm in an aircraft and we're accelerating, I'm not pushing back my seat as if when I'm in my pickup truck and I floor it. I get up to 100 miles an hour and I'm still accelerating, then it doesn't make any sense to me. Please disprove me.
You said you study aviation, which I was an expert in that field for many years. You don't accelerate at the same rate in an airplane versus a car. They accelerate very slowly due to the efficiency of applying that force to the actual object with propellers and jet engine thing. They accelerate very slowly, so you don't feel the same forces.
I feel like I'm faster in a plane than in my car.
Well, let me finish. I'm not done yet. So when you apply that lesser force over a longer period of time, and you can keep that force at the same level, a constant force, you will continue to accelerate well beyond what you reach in cars. So you reach speeds, not 60 miles an hour, but hundreds of miles an hour, up to 500 or 600 miles an hour. So once you get to those velocities and they don't change, you reach a top speed or some terminal velocity, you don't feel any forces whatsoever due to the speed alone. Only a change of speed. I don't know how much more clear to be.
So listen, guys. Hold on, guys. This has been a really great event, and this has been like number 6 in our Roundtable Flat Earth series. It's been very, very good as always. But 65, 70 people showed up to this event. We've had 90 big events like this before. We'll continue to do so. But we do have another Roundtable special event starting in 13 minutes. It's about Michael Hastings, the journalist who was assassinated a few years ago. So stick around and participate in that event. But just so you guys know, you got about 10 more minutes to talk flat Earth, and then we have to wrap up this podcast.
Well, I was just going to really say quickly, that's where internal forces come in. When you start moving, the internal forces take over for a little bit, but after a while, internal forces take over to keep the thing together. That's why we need to talk about internal forces versus external forces with the pressurized cabin, the pressurized car, the pressurized moving object versus the stuff outside of that object. That's why we need to have another paradigm to address that. Otherwise, all we have are external forces that would threaten to pull the object apart.
The thing is, my experience of curvature of the Earth. I remember I have this memory. I was at the beach. I live in California, SoCal, And I was looking at sailing. I was looking at the sailing boats because I'm going to need a sailboat here in the near future. But I remember seeing the sails disappearing over the horizon and thinking, well, I guess the world is round. And that was pretty much the only thought. But I mean, I could have been wrong. I could have, it could have been an optical illusion. It's a very loose memory that, it's just a passing memory or whatever of a beautiful sunset. But I was wondering if anyone else have had that experience. I know you guys brought up the sails disappearing in the.
Merlin, is that you? Hey, yeah. Let me talk to you real quick because I had the exact same experience in 2014. I was on a flight from Seattle, Washington to Phoenix, and I remember the certain photo. There's a lot of things to talk about. I took a lot of photos, but there was one in particular where I thought, okay, I'm gonna look at the highest angle just straight out to the horizon, and I'm gonna take a picture of the curvature of the Earth. And I'm like, yeah, here it is. And I go click, yeah, I got the curvature of the Earth in my camera. And about a year and a half later, this woman mentioned flat Earth to me, and I said, ma'am, I have picture of the curvature. I have pictures of the curvature. Let me show you. And I got out my phone. It was actually a really good phone at the time. This is a long time ago. This is 2014. Pulled it out. I look at it. I go, oh shit! It's not curved. It's flat. And I would just made a fool out of myself. And that really embarrassed me. So I realized my perception of things when I believe something because I'm told is absolutely completely different and sometimes polar opposite of what we actually experience in reality. And sometimes we have to take a double take. There's often conspiracy theorists that drive me crazy because they want to claim this Mandela effect. No, things didn't change. It's that you're just a stupid person, just like I was when we all make mistakes. Is that it's not them, it's us sometimes, and we have to take ourselves into that account. And but yeah, so I had a very similar experience. But if I could, because we're so short on time, is Sassy there? I wanted to show Sassy a picture. But other than that, Merlin, did that satisfy the scenario?
Dude, mind blown. Yeah, you see things through the lens you want to see them through. And I mean, I was freaking immature and naive, intelligently back then. So I'm going to have to take another look, man. It looks like I'm about to go watch another sunset, but yeah, go ahead.
It's very interesting because I guess I got to be thankful for my dad, but I'm really thankful to God that he showed me some things a long time ago. And of course, my dad was a baby boomer. So of course, and grandpa worked for Lockheed Martin, and he used to give me these models of the space shuttles. And I thought, oh, that's okay and everything, but I'd much rather fly a fighter plane and, blow things up. I thought that was the cool thing. So I never really got into space, but I knew about it, completely believed it. So that's part of what we are all indoctrinated at a very young age. And that's normal. So I put a picture in for Sassy. Can you tell us what you're looking at in this picture, Sassy?
Which chat did you post it in?
Well, it seems to be that I'm not seeing it. This says general chat. Isn't this the roundtable general chat, or is this a different one?
Yeah, you need to post it in voice text.
Let me see where I'm at here. Voice text. There it is. Okay, I apologize. Let me try to do that one more time. Here we are. Okay, so this is just a very simple photo. This isn't the first time this has ever been photographed, but I think most people need to learn about this one thing because I didn't know, even after I knew the Earth was flat, I didn't know what this was. And actually, I was quite surprised to see this. It was December 2018. Very similar flight path to the first one, 2014 anyway. And I noticed this darkness, and it I was like, what is that? Why is there and it was behind us at first. I remember looking back and to the left of the airplane. I'm on the port side, right? So the driver's side of the airplane, flying south, and I'm looking out there, and I see this dark horizon. At first, I thought, what is it? What do you think that is? Cassie, tell me what you're seeing.
Looks like when you see dusk or nighttime starting.
That would be correct. And what it's technically called in the air industry is Earth's shadow, but what it is something else. And it was misunderstood for quite some time that it's not Earth's shadow. I'm not only going to tell you the definition of what this is, I'm going to tell you what it's named. This is obviously exactly what Sassy just described. This is darkness. This is the absence of light. Of course, as we all know, as a light moves away from a dark area, the darkness engulfs it. Well, that's exactly what's happening here. The problem is that if you're an antithesis against this flat Earth idea, you're believing that the darkness is hiding behind a curve. And they've spent the last year and a half saying that things loom because of light. Well, then you can't loom darkness. And this is something that is only possible on a flat plane of existence, guys. And it was something new even after I already knew. But it depends on your eyes to see. You got to have the right glasses on, bro. But anybody can find out this information. Anybody can see this for themselves. It only works one way.
Yeah, as I said earlier on, as light when it's just a small local sun. It's moving closer towards you and it lights you up when it gets to you, and then as it moves away, that gets dark. That's the exact same thing. Small local sun.
All right, guys. Well, this has been another fantastic Flat Earth event. We really enjoy them. We'll do them on a regular basis, probably about once a month. But it's time to wrap this one up, and we do have another special event after this on the Michael Hastings assassination, and after that, another one on Bigfoot. So stick around, but we're going to close this episode now, so thanks for participating. You can stay in this room if you want, since the event's going to start in another few minutes. But we're the Roundtable Discord server. Just Google Roundtable Discord, find us on social media. We're streaming on Twitch, we're on YouTube, and we got a podcast. You can find it all through RT Podcast on the server. Thanks so much, Flat Earthers and Ball Earthers and everybody else. We appreciate your time. That concludes another episode. And in 5 minutes, we're going to start next one. So stay here or jump up, whatever. But thank you.